Okay. We're set. All right. So I wish to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, Tumtumewaitin, or Balcarra, is home to an ancestral village of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. We are thankful to conduct our work within their territory. So I will call to order the meeting at 7:01 p.m. Looking for an approval of the agenda.
Your
And
worship,
there-
so moved. Sorry, I have an on-table item, your worship.
Oh, okay, and okay, and I was just gonna say it has on it, I was gonna read out that you have an on-table item that you would like to be part of that's amended, right? So do you want to read what it is?
Yes, your worship, it's a verbal report regarding an update on the strategic planning priorities of council.
Okay, and that would be added as item 5.4.
Correct.
Okay. So looking for a motion from
Somebody- Sorry, excuse me, your worship, I also would like to note I'd like to add a notice of motion to the agenda.
Okay. Okay.
I assume it would go under 7 bylaws. I don't know. I'll take guidance on that.
Okay, or
I think it would go under
new business?
your worship.
Yep. Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, it could go, actually, I would say under new business number 9.
Yeah,
Okay,
because your intent, Councillor Drake, is that it be a notice of motion for the following meeting, correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so we can note that you have a notice of motion coming on that
Good.
under new business.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
I have one item, if I might.
okay, Councillor John Snell, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I would request that item 8.4, which concerns the cycleway, be elevated from information item to an action item.
Okay,
Thank you.
and you're welcome to do it at this time, or you'd be welcome to do it when we actually get into the substance of those. So, but we'll note that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything further? Okay, so looking for a motion by a councillor to move the agenda as amended, please.
So moved.
Councillor Clark moving and Councillor
I'll second.
Drake seconding. Okay, any discussion on that? The motion as amended. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and it carries in the affirmative, and I note that it's unanimous. Okay, so number 3, adoption of minute. You have in front of you the regular council meeting minutes of May 25th, 2021, that the minutes from the regular council meeting held May 25th, 2021 be adopted. Looking for a councillor to move. Councillor Clark.
Moved.
And seconding, Councillor Snell.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's on the floor for discussion. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, say aye and raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
And I would note that it is carries in the affirmative and it's unanimous. So we're moving on to delegations and presentations. And it's my pleasure on behalf of council and the community to welcome Corporal Neil Raymer, RCMP, regarding the RCMP 2020 Balcarra Annual Report Update. And thank you very much, Corporal Raymer, for coming and for giving a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to make a few comments about 2020 and what it looked like with respect to police service levels in Balcarra. Obviously, 2020 was a completely different year for most people, and did see some level of increase in the number of files that were were attended by the RCMP in Belcarra in 2020. And we did go from approximately 134 files from 81 files in 2019. So that's approximately a 65% increase in the number of files. Now, calls for service don't necessarily reflect an increase in criminal activity. It just means that police are being called to respond to a variety of different situations. For example, I'll point out, you can see the document that's up there now. And the way that I've divided this up is kind of the way it's being done statistically these days, into property offenses, person offenses, and other criminal offenses. And with respect to property offenses, it did rise from 12 in 2019 to 16 in 2020. Break and enters went down, theft of vehicle and other went up. Those are within kind of the levels that we would expect for Belcarra, and there was no particular sharp spike through the course of the year. That just kind of took place over the course of the year of 2020. Person offenses, there was certainly a rise from 2019 to 2020, went from 1 to 6. The comment that I'll make there is park visitors and particular addresses in the community of Belcarra did contribute to that. And to my knowledge, one of the addresses involved, that situation has changed for the better in 2021. So I think we'll see a reduction in the number of calls with respect to those type of calls for service. And other criminal offenses, certainly causing a disturbance, which is a relatively minor offense that typically does not result in charges of any kind. That did double from 3 to 6 into 2020. However, those are typically resolved at scene unless there's some very unusual circumstance. I did, just for information, I did include the traffic calls for service, which remain static. There were 3 collisions in each of the years. They're all minor. There was no major collisions in Belcarra during that time. One of the things that did, in terms of noting where this increase might have come from, in terms of the calls for service, bylaw calls did go up from 3 to 15. Those typically are noise and parking. We do get others, but those certainly form the bulk of those kind of calls for service. And just for information purposes, suspicious persons, vehicles, or circumstances went up slightly, but that hopefully is a reflection of a more willingness for people to call in, and that is probably a good thing as opposed to seeing the increase as a negative. And overall, Belcarra is a very safe community. Like I said, the more serious offenses involved particular households and park visitors, and we're not related to any kind of, we'll call it, outside influence coming into the community and causing trouble. With that, I'll take kind of any questions or trying to answer any questions that you would have.
Okay, so we'll go through, we'll start maybe with council first, and then we'll gravitate out to the audience. All right, so any counselor that would like to go first? Any questions? Councillor Wilder, I see you. We'll go with you, please.
Were any of those incidents bear related?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Search my memory banks. I do not recall seeing any animal calls for Belcarra in 2020.
Okay, thanks.
If-
They were
if
all
there
human.
was one.
Human issues.
Yes, definitely human issues. That's
Thank you.
related. Sorry, the one comment that I will add is that these are not, all of these calls are not necessarily related to Belcarra. A small number, a handful would be related to Indian Arm as well.
Right.
Which obviously we included just because of the location.
Right.
But they're not a significant number. And also these files don't include the number of vessel checks. I did remove those because those are just enforcement that we're doing to ensure marine safety and don't have anything particularly to do with the level of crime in Belcarra itself.
So I've added on if I can, and I'm seeing, I want to thank you for the work you've done in kind of putting these stats into perspective for us. And in particular, just touch upon the marine part, because I know you and your team from time to time are able to get out on the water. And I know you're involved with a large area that includes marine parts. But can you talk a little bit about what you do, just really briefly, when you're able to get out with your team?
Yeah, I mean, certainly more so in the summer and less so in the winter. We're out on the water. That is certainly a significant part of our unit mandate, is to do marine enforcement. Typically, what we're looking for is marine safety, that vessels have the proper safety equipment. So we're doing safety checks. We're also typically going to be doing fisheries checks, mostly related to crabbing. We're checking crab traps in the area pretty regularly, and certainly on the docks of the marine park, we're checking for fishing licenses and making sure that people are compliant with the Fisheries Act. We do get the odd call for service. Those are not common, although when I say that, I actually have received a number of calls of late over the past two months or so, that just kind of seen an uptick in the number of calls that are related to the marine environment, I'll call it.
Right.
And that's, for the most part, that's what we're looking at. You know, we are on the lookout for impaired boating, but that does not seem to be as big an issue, thankfully, as it might, as people might think it is. So that's, you know, just hasn't come across our way just yet. And
Okay.
so that's kind of typically what we're doing when we're out on the water.
Right. Is there a component there around noise on the water where you have an official capacity, or is it not within your mandate?
Yeah, that's that actually is a topic of conversation that I'm about to have with the Port Authority.
Right.
I am not aware of, personally, at this
Yep.
time, of any ability to enforce any particular provision related to noise.
Right.
The only thing that kind of does come into play is a criminal offense of mischief, which normally is damage to property, but it also includes broadly the loss of enjoyment of your property.
Right.
That is stretching it, to say the least.
Yeah.
To make a noise complaint into that kind of offense.
Right.
There would have to be some fairly unique circumstances that we could act on. So that in the marine environment, noisy boats are a bit of a question mark, I gotta be honest.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that answer, and thank you very much. And I will yield the floor right now, and I'll look to see if we've got anybody else on council. And if we don't, we'll look to see what's out there in the audience, if anybody has a question or thought. So does that mean that as a audience, we're good, and a council, we're good? So I have, if we're all good, before we finish off, I'll do a final piece and just ask one question in terms of, in regards to speeding on the roads. Are you in a position to be able to share what you have done in the past and what you would do going forward, Constable Raymer, around that?
Yeah, so with respect to speeding in Belcarra, certainly this has been an issue in the past. When I took a look at the causes of collisions in Belcarra over the past, at
Yep.
that time, that was 2 years ago, 5 years, so that'd be going back to approximately 2014. There was a grand total of 2 collisions that you could say that speed was one of the primary causal factors.
Right.
And there's been none of those, no other collisions in the last 2 years, meaning 2019 and 2020, would you say that speed is a factor? So
Okay.
2 collisions in 7 years attributed to speed is not a significant number.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a very low number. So going back, this would be back to approximately 2019. We did do some analysis of the speeds in Belcarra with the Black Cat technology that the detachment got, and we did put it up. And the results that we got were, there was some speeding in the 30K zone near the end of Bedwell Bay towards the Marine Park.
Okay.
The 50-kilometer-hour stretch where we had it, which was typically positioned right at the entrance there by Sankler Road,
Right.
that was not very significant in terms of an enforcement place to do business. So, and there's not a lot of other places within Belcarra where enforcement is a practical thing because of the curves and the hills, and
Right.
it's not, you got to have some level of ability to stop traffic and pull them over at a spot that's safe. So speeding, I have not personally been out in Belcarra of late with respect to speeding.
Yep.
Part of the reason is there is not an enormous amount of collisions that involve speed. And one of the things that we do enforcement with respect to speed is because there are related collisions
Right.
in that area. And that's kind of the, what we call the intelligence-led policing that we should be doing.
Right.
So that's kind of what has been done in the past. We did try and do the Black Cat last year again, but somebody stole it. So that's a bit of an issue at this point to be able
Okay.
to do it.
Nope.
They don't come cheap.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So look, on behalf of our community, I would like you to thank you for coming. I'd also like to, if I could, recognize, I believe Zach Jenkins is on your team and Doug Burton. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And I would like, in a very general way, to, and part of it involves confidentiality and privacy, but I would like to thank you and your team for times where you go above and beyond your duty to ensure that when people in Belcarra are in need, you respond in a very quick way, and you spend very appropriate time. And I'll just leave it at that general comment, but it has been passed on to me by individuals, you and your team, on a number of occasions doing that. And we really want to thank you for that above and beyond commitment to our community. So thank you very much. And I will look right now to conclude that part. And
May I please
Sorry,
ask a quick
Jamie.
question?
There is,
Jamie, David Shulastandy's had his hand up for quite a while.
yeah, so actually, I'm going to say that prior to me calling for twice, Mr. Shulastandy did not have his first and last name, so he was not an eligible person at the time. I went
Okay.
back, but thank you for that. But it is fair that people know that to be a speaker, you need your first and your last name. And I called 2 times, and both times I looked, and there was not a name on the list with the first and last name. I proceeded, and so it is my judgment now that our session is over. Okay, but thank you for bringing that forward. I was very conscious of that, and I watched it closely. Okay, so that would move us on to Corporal Raymer. Thank you very much. Any last parting words?
No, that's everything. Thank you very much for having me come and present.
Thank
Okay.
you for coming. It's nice to see you again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over on item 5.1 to Lorna Dysart, our Chief Administrative Officer. And before I do, I will note that I will disclose a conflict. I'm not entitled to participate in the discussion of this matter or to vote on it because I have a direct pecuniary interest in the matter and because I am a member of a group wharf association that is the subject of a legal action. So I intend to leave the meeting now and I will not be participating in this part. And when it is appropriate, if you could bring me back into the meeting. And I'll ensure that I'm unable to hear. And I know technically you'll do that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Drake, just I would advise for the audience, is the deputy mayor, and he will now assume the chair.
And could I just raise that I'm technically not out yet? So if maybe we could wait just to allow that
Sure.
process to happen. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay,
Thank you. It appears that Mayor Ross has now been put in the waiting room. So we are moving on now to item 5, which is a report from our Chief Administrative Officer. So
Yes.
Lorna?
thank you, Your Worship. This report is, the purpose of this report is to provide information regarding the delegation by Ishu Listani requesting access to an existing stone wall platform across the municipal right-of-way property from 3762 Marine Avenue. In the background of my report, I advise that in July 2015, council passed a motion to remove an abandoned gated stairway fronting 3762 Marine Avenue and the affected land be allowed to return to its natural state. This work was completed. I then list the various pieces of legislation that support the motion that I have put forward to council. And that is that the consolidated zoning bylaw states that floats, wharfs, piers, walkways shall be designed and constructed as to not impede pedestrian access across the public foreshore nor diminish public access to the beach. Constructions of stairs, decks, or walkways to access the foreshore is no longer permitted in order to protect the natural vegetation in the Marine Avenue riparian zone. Elevated ramps are required to cross the Marine Avenue riparian zone to structures such as piers and wharfs on a recreational water lot license. The riparian area zone along that stretch of land goes from the pavement of the roadway to the high water mark, so that all that entire stretch of land is considered a riparian area. And it's regulated under the riparian area regulation, which I also outline in my report. And the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority recreational dock guidelines for Burrard Inlet quotes in part that the requirement is to maintain public access to the beach or foreshore between the high water and low water mark. Structures cannot block public access along a beach or foreshore area. Disturbance to existing riparian vegetation should be avoided or minimized. Relevant legislation and bylaws clearly state that private use may not be approved for municipal property along a waterfront and or within a riparian area. And that's the end of my report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I note that a number of parties on this, I'm just looking at my screen, are not appearing visually, but rather have images up. And I see now that I do have full names in many cases, not all. But I would ask that we see people that are speaking rather than have images up of various forms. I'll say that now so you have time to deal with that. I don't think there's any images being shown here that the council is not aware of. So I'd ask that we be able to see people as they're speaking, but that's in the audience. So I'm going to start with council members. And since we can, I see Sherry's waving her hands, but I'm going to deal with council members first, and then we'll go to the audience. Sherry. Any comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I'm not sure. I apologize. I'm working with a new computer here, so I may be a little slow. I am not seeing any comments from council members. So now I'm going to go to the audience. Oh, sorry. I've got John Snell. John.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Drake. I'm referring to the report that was provided by the Shulestani family a couple of weeks ago, and it was very thorough. It was compelling reading, and it was certainly worthy of a good look. I spent a lot of time going through it, and the presentation was largely based around around a staff report, which was the private use of an existing staircase that was put to council on August the 10th, 1995. And the recommendation that a highway encroachment be authorized was in that recommendation. It was also referenced a little, I think, at a meeting subsequent to that, that the highway encroachment be offered, and I think this is probably the items that were presented as being the strongest items to support the case for a highway encroachment, and that's really the problem here. Is that in the staff report, which was conducted by the by Works, certainly the recommendation was there. However, there were a number of conditions attached to that recommendation. The recommendation was that there was compliance with the conditions of a highway encroachment agreement. There were also the recommended items that the repairs to be completed consistent with the residential construction standards adopted by the village and Vancouver Port Corporation. There was the recommendation that the replacement of detached stair treads, handrails and guard supports using pressure treated wood, an application of slip resistant material to untreated stair treads, an installation of a gate complete with signage noting a private facility, improvements to be completed within 60 days. The subsequent, this was a report that would have been given to council by Works, and again it came up in a subsequent council meeting where they were again comfortable to support the application, but also noted that it would be subject to the terms and conditions as submitted in the report by Public Works. The long and short of it, the property never had a highway encroachment in place. So really, in seeking a restoration of something that never really existed in the first place is a bit of an oxymoron there. To give you a little bit of history on the stairs in question, those staircases were basically they were constructed. A lot of properties on Marine Avenue were bought by the current owners back in the 70s, and a lot of those lots remained vacant for up to a decade before people started building on them. And this, of course, is we're talking about a time when the village was not incorporated. There weren't too many bylaws. construction standards weren't really in place. And it was not unusual for people to get together and make some sort of access to the beach. They basically just wanted to do that so the kids could get down the bank and get to the water and have some fun. And that's really what happened. They were unauthorized. They certainly weren't built to any code. And you could actually call it the theft of land, that they actually put these steps in place. Those steps were put in place, as I say, back in the early 80s by the original owner of the property. He enjoyed those, the first owner enjoyed those steps shortly after they were put in, and he sold the property. And I believe the property then remained rented for a while the second owner actually lived elsewhere in the village. The third owner came along, and this third owner was the Ruptash family. And they were the ones that ended up with these steps across the street. And they thought, gee, that's kind of neat. And so they came to council and said, okay, council, we'd like to make these steps legal and use them for our benefit and get a highway encroachment. Those sort of things were beginning to happen, and obviously and taken seriously in 1995. And the Ruptashes, the council was very cooperative. Council always wants to try and give villagers what it wants. And they said, okay, we'll go along with that, but you've got to meet the criteria. And the Ruptashes were given the option to meet the criteria, do the work, and then apply for a highway encroachment. They chose not to do that. And there's no evidence that they did any restoration or any repairs, no record of any application for a highway encroachment. So it's a moot point. There's nothing there. The Ruptashes sold their house to a couple subsequently. They had no interest in in getting to the water from what was becoming then a very dangerous, abandoned, rickety old gate and staircase. In fact, it was because it was getting so dangerous that the council ordered it removed in July of 15, as our CAO's report indicated. That couple sold the house to yet another family who again had absolutely no interest in the waterfront or anything outside. And then again, they then sold the house to the Shulastani family. So it really is, there is nothing there to restore. Another thrust of the argument presented by the family a couple of weeks ago was in fact the claim that their property was in fact the only one on Marine Avenue that did not have access to either a dock or the water. The reality is there are 45 Marine Avenue addresses, and there are something like 14 that actually have no access to either water or the beach or a dock. Now, as has been pointed out to us, for several decades now, it has been prohibited to put anything across actually into the bank on a riparian zone. And I think anybody that has been familiar with the dock construction, wharf construction over the last couple of decades, and this would probably be six wharfs or something, the structures have not, in fact, gone onto the bank at all. The requirement is they go straight from top to the wharf. The invasion onto the riparian zone is minimal. It has to be a structure that can be removed. And the only place where a staircase touches the bank is as a landing for a set of stairs to keep it safe. So again, there is absolutely no provision for anything other on a bank other than a removable staircase as access to a floating facility. And I think that probably sums it up. So I would have to say that unfortunate, it's probably not what people want to hear. but I have to go with the recommendation, and that the application is denied. So with that, if any other councillors have any comments or questions, I would be very happy to answer rather.
Thank you, John. I'll wait to see if other council members have comments. I see Councillor Clark. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Drake. I just have one quick question. Thanks for the clarifications, John and Lorna. That's very helpful. So I just wanted to confirm two things. So you said, John, councillors, now that there's 45 addresses on Marine Avenue. So 14 of those addresses does not have private access to the shore, correct?
That's correct.
How many? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. There are because we can. There's two things here. One is access to the beach, and the other
Private.
is access to a wharf and floating structure. Now, as far as accesses to the actual beach would be concerned, there are 5 public footpaths that go down from Marine Avenue to the beach. They are public. There's 5 of those.
Okay.
Now, the exact number of I'm not too sure of the exact number of on the wharf side, because there are, I believe, I think there are 13 group wharfs. There are 13 group wharfs on the foreshore there, and I think there are a number of single wharfs and a couple of shared wharfs. Now, depending on when those facilities were built, would depend on whether they have beach access. So, in addition to the 5 public beach accesses that do exist, there will be private beach accesses that will come off landings that were on wharfs that were built prior to the clampdown, which would have been 20 years ago. So for instance, the wharf that I'm on, for instance, is a simple staircase. It can be removed. We would have loved to have been able to get access to the beach from our stairway, but this was just not allowed. On the riparian zone, as far back as a couple of decades ago, just as in the report, where where I will quote again: construction of stairs, decks, and walkways to access the foreshore is no longer permitted in order to protect the natural vegetation and the Marine Avenue riparian zone. And it really is as simple as that. And that was the rule.
Okay.
That was the rule for me. That was the rule for half a dozen other, group wharfs as well. So the number of people that don't have their own private beach access is actually, greater.
Okay, so 45 addresses on Marine, 14 does not have private access to the beach or to a wharf. There are 5 public access existing right now. Okay, so that's all of my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? I'm going to note again that I do have John Shulistani. Thank you, John, for removing images. I still see 3 that are images. And there's Ben as well. Okay, so we now have a number of cases where I'd be happy to turn to people so they can make the presentations. I'm going to start with Sherry because I think she was first. I'm sorry, my screen doesn't tell me who's first, but Sherry, you'd raised your hand earlier.
Yes, I would just like to say that I think the Shulistanis are in full agreement that nobody wants to break the rules and regulations. I think it's good that's all been pointed out where somebody might get off track, but Jim Chisholm designed the elevated ramps that everybody is using. And you can certainly do the same thing with a top touch point that the ramps have and a bottom touch point. And you can do it with a staircase just as easily as a ramp. So there would be no damage or intrusion on the bank.
So you're saying, if I take it correctly, Sherry, you're saying, Jim's saying technically it's likely you can do a minimal impact. Is that correct?
Exactly. And I think as long as the rules are followed and the Shoeless Dannies are willing to pay for it, pay for the design, and for a proper carpenter, a proper person, and the oversight by the village or whomever, I think as long as they follow the rules, I think it'd be great. And they're willing to pay for it and insure it too, and leave it open for all the villagers to use,
So you're talking, Sherry,
following all the rules. So
you're
I
talking.
don't see why not.
You're talking about a public access issue, is that correct?
Well, if that would work for the village, I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to make it private if that's the rule, but
Yeah.
why not? As far as they're concerned, I think they're willing to leave it open. So I think that'd be a great benefit, and they'd insure it and all that sort of stuff. So I don't see any negative, and it's certainly not going to impede people walking across the beach. It's already got a landing point from the old staircase still there, obviously been there since the 70s or 80s. So there'd be no damage or much change, and an elevated staircase. So I think maybe councillors should reconsider that it's really not going to do any damage, and it could serve a good purpose for all the villagers if they follow the rules.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm going to go next to John and John Shoeless-Danny. I believe, John, you were next. I believe you're muted, John.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
I'm sorry,
Thank
John
you.
doesn't have his video on.
Oh, could you put on your video, please, John?
I'm not sure if I can put the video on.
And we're getting a bit of feedback. If people can mute if you're not speaking, please.
Thank you. But as per your request, I have removed the image which I had there, so I don't believe that's an issue.
No, just that we would prefer to see your face. We're going to let you go ahead. I appreciate this is a very important issue to you.
Thank
and
you
your
so
family.
much. Okay. What I would like to say is that
John, there was something wrong with your audio there.
hello, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
That's clear now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Basically, I would like to talk about the report and raise certain issues with the report. The report suggests that the request may be denied because public access may not be blocked. However, the report does not say whether the staircase does or does not block public access, and the report left it to the council to figure this out without providing a background image or a drawing or a sketch plan. This issue was raised back in 1995, and there was a public works attended the site, and they confirmed that the staircase does not block any public access. So I believe that issue, which based on zoning bylaw 510, section 701, which is being ironically reported as 710, it is actually 701.10, that a special condition that it must be constructed as to not impede pedestrian access. Well, actually, this was raised because this issue is the same issues raised in policy 137, based on which a highway encroachment agreement granted to the previous owner of 3762 Marine Avenue. So I believe with respect to public access, the staircase does not block or impede any pedestrian access to the public foreshore, nor diminish any public access to the beach, because the staircase is actually situated above the high water mark and above the beach. So the beach runs along the shore, and this staircase has nothing to do with the beach, nor does it block the beach, and it was confirmed in the report in 1995, and that's what And that's why one of the reasons that the highway encroachment agreement was granted to the previous owner of the property in 1995, because it made the requirement that it does not impede any pedestrian access along the beach or the public access to the beach. There was also a paragraph after that in the report. It reads, construction of stairs, decks, walkways to access the foreshore is no longer permitted in order to protect the natural vegetation in the Marine Avenue riparian zone. This statement is not in any bylaw or in any policy. I'm not quite sure where the reference point of that statement is. I would like to please provide the reference point so the applicant can review the bylaw or a policy which reflect that particular sentence. I believe that sentence has been added to the report, but that sentence is not in the zoning bylaw. I believe the council should be very aware of the sentences put back is actually written after a statement which is actually in the bylaw. So that statement is not in the bylaw. That's maybe an impolite or made an opinion, but it's not a law. Also, at the very end of the report, it also says relevant registration and bylaws clearly state the private use may not be approved. Again, that statement is a statement of opinion, not a law or authority. And I would encourage the council to request the authority and provide a reference so the applicant can make a response or reply to that particular line as well. Furthermore, again, what bylaw it talks about basically access to the water. The circus does not have access to the water, nor does it have access to the foreshore. Everything is above the high water mark. Everything is above the beach. So any piling or any of those sort of requirement is not needed, as stated in the staff report in 1995. The only thing required in the staff report 1995 was to make the staircase safe, and also based on a material which is approved by the village. And I believe and I thank Sherry for pointing this out, that a designer can design it in such a way that no vegetation can be harmed, because there is no trees to be cut, and there no vegetation is touched. There is only 2 touch points that could be made, both one at the entrance, which at the road, another one, the landing point is on the Stonewall platform, which is already exists, and that access and that location, which is the exit point, is above the foreshore, above the beach, and above the high water mark, and there is no public access on there. All accesses remain the same. There is no blockage. So I believe when the council reads the report, should reflect what is actually in the law and what is a state of opinion. I believe the council should be very aware of it. Another point which I would like to make a note is that I understand that the acting mayor, I mean, you as an MBA degree would know that any report must reference a sketch plan at least, so we know the location of the staircase. Understand that there was no reference to any sketch plan or a staircase. That's why it may be confusing where the staircase starts and where the staircase lands. And also the report, again, only talks about the certain laws and does not say whether the staircase does or does not block public access. It does not say. But in 1995, it says that it does not block public access. And that's why, based on policy 137, the staircase was granted in 1995. In 2003 and in 2004 and 2016, again, 3 different staircases were granted to 3 different owners based on the same policy, and they did not block public access. So from Marine Avenue to the Stonewall platform, there is no public access. It's just a short distance of a few feet, and that's a steep slope. There is nothing blocking. So the circus would not block any public access.
John Shulastani, this is Sherry speaking. I think you would do wise to leave this at this point in the hands of the council. They understand what's going on, and I think you would best just at this point leave it to them. They've got all the info.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I am looking again to the audience. Again, I
Counselor
have-
Clark has her hand up.
Counselor, okay, I'm going to finish with the audience first and I'll come back to Counselor Clark. I registered that you're there. Ben, I see you've got your image up. That's fine. So we'll turn to Ben then. Ben Shulistani, thank you. I believe you're muted, Ben.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great. So I think John said some great points to make a note of, but I would like to address some other issues that would complement what John mentioned. I would appreciate if the council would please pull up the presentation that I gave on May 10, 2021, because it helps if I could refer to the drawing and the image there is so that it is better explained. May I request that you present that presentation file so I can refer to it?
Well, I think that would be a little difficult to arrange now, but if you just want to make the point, Ben, that you want council to consider.
Sorry, I cannot hear you. Can you say again?
Yes, I was just saying. Okay, we've got audio feedback. If I could ask people to mute if you're not speaking. So at the moment, it should be just Ben and I that have mics open. Ben, I think it's easy enough for you to describe what you say is within your report, as opposed to our trying to dig it up at this point. I think that's probably impractical for us.
So, well, actually, it is the request. This request is from Mr. Shulistani. I think we cannot. Let me read what he had prepared to say, and then maybe this would help in saying why this is critical. These images and the drawing is very critical for before any decision is made. Mr. Shulistani said, I need an opportunity, I'm quoting him, I need an opportunity to respond to the village report dated June 7, 2021, published in the agenda for the council meeting today, June 7, 2021. Specifically, I need an opportunity to clarify the issues raised in the village report. In fact, I would like to invite and encourage the council and the staff to visit the site in person and see for themselves the following key locations to make an informed decision. Number one, the location of the private staircase access to be restored on the steep slope between Marine Avenue and the Stonewall platform situated above the beach, above the high water mark, and obviously outside any public access. And number two, the location of the public access, namely the beach, the low watermark and the high watermark that Ms. Dysart talked about. Those are critical pieces of information. This staircase, which is proposed to be restored, would have no impact, not minimal impact, no impact, nothing, nil, zero impact on the beach, on the low water mark, between the low water mark and the high water mark, or have anything to do with the public access. And as well pointed out by our fellow villager, Sherry Chisholm, it would be built with considerations to the starting and ending location with an elevated walkway. So you would have no impact even on the vegetation. It would start on Marine Avenue and end on the landing, which is the Stonewall platform. So again, no impact. So those are critical locations to be considered. And this, and as an alternative, is if the council and the staff do not wish to go to the site and see it for themselves, Mr. Shulestani offers to give a presentation to the council with a drawing and photos that visually demonstrate these particular locations that I pointed out, which are missing from the village report. These critical drawings and photos are needed before any decision is made. If this opportunity cannot be provided to Mr. Shulestani today, he kindly requests from the council to please defer the matter to a later date so that he can present his response material, including those drawings and the photos, before a decision is made. Otherwise, in Mr. Shulestani's opinion, injustice may happen because the report is misleading. The report includes information that is demonstrably false or it is irrelevant to his application. Furthermore, the report relies on certain personal statements, not bylaw statement, but it is reported such that it could be implied as they were made in the village bylaw, which is not true. So Mr. Shulestani requests an opportunity to present those information to the council.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to wrap
Mr.
up.
Shulestani has made
Ben,
an application to restore his staircase access to the somewhat platform fronting his property, 3762 Marine Avenue, similar to the application of the previous owners of the same property.
Ben, I'm going to ask you to stop now. You've run long beyond what we would normally provide for a speaker. I think you've made your key points. I appreciate you would have concern if the opportunity isn't provided for the response you reply to or a visit to the site. I've taken that message from you, and you will get another chance to speak before we finish. Thank you, and thank you for coming up live on screen. John, I see your hand is still up. I'm going to go back to council now. I will come back to the audience before we wrap because I appreciate this is a sensitive and quite emotional issue for a number of people. So I'm not going to be a stickler in terms of timelines. Oh, John, I see your hand is down now. Okay. I'm coming back to council now. Carolina Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. Okay, I've been listening very carefully to everything that everybody has to say. I just have a few points. If we were to try like doing what Sherry was suggesting, which is a ramp, that would be a very, very steep ramp. I think it would be honestly not even a walkable ramp. Maybe you could sit down and slide down, but you know, I think it would make it very difficult. I did go to the site to see it, not just today, not just from the shore, but also from the water. I know what the site looks like. And I believe most of the councillors here do as well. I will point it out to one of the things that we heard from our CAO. It's that the riparian zone, and please correct me if I'm wrong through the chair to Lorna, the riparian zone goes from the pavement to the high water mark. So even though it's municipal land, it's still considered a riparian zone, and there's some sort of, there's quite a few laws that we have to abide for, one of them being protecting the riparian zone at the last page. And one thing I should say too, is that, you know, that I see a problem here with what's being asked, but not a problem just specific to the situation. So I'm looking above and beyond per se. So if we find ourselves in a situation that, let's say, every resident would apply for a private access to the beach, that would be a lot of ramps and a lot of set of stairs going down to the beach. What would that look like on the riparian zone? Parts of the banks are giving out already. I think, you know, it's one thing you're saying, oh yeah, I'll fix the bank. Well, you can fix that little part of the bank. What about 20 feet the other way and 20 feet to the right, 20 feet to the left? So I think we need to consider this when we're talking about this specific case, because if we were to move, if there is even a way, honestly, because from what I see here, we're impeded by so many other laws that are above us, other entities that have more power than us. But my main concern will lay in the fact of if you were to allow one family to build a private access to the beach, that's what they're asking. You know, Sherry's saying it's talking, yes, that's what they're asking, Sherry. They're asking for a private access to the beach. They are not asking for a public access. There is already 5 access there. If we were to allow everybody to do private access, that would potentially hurt the riparian zone. So that's where my head is at right now. I'll leave it at that for now and see if any other councilors will make any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. Sherry, I will come back to you in a moment. Is there anybody else on council wanted to comment at this point? Okay, so I'm going to go back then to Sherry. I assume you want to respond to that. So Sherry then?
Yes, there is a complete, absolute misunderstanding. This would not be a private staircase. It would not have a gate and a sign saying private. It would be used by all of the villagers.
That's what you're saying, but what is being asked by the applicant, which is the Shulastanis, they specifically asked under delegation, and yet again, many times they cited as they were speaking for a private access, not a public access.
I don't think
We
they're
already
asking
have
for
5
that.
public access.
They're not asking for that today. And
Well,
I don't know
Sherry,
about
that's
the
what I
5
heard. They
access.
said that many times. They said that many times, so.
Well, they may have said it many times, but it certainly wasn't what was I heard today. I don't think it was their promise today. And I don't know about the 5 accesses, how safe any of them are. But I mean, if this meets all the rules and regulations and they agree to it being public, I mean, they're going to sign documents with the village. So let's not make assumptions that it's going to be bad.
Well, thank you very much, Sherry. I appreciate the clarification. And again, let me reiterate, I do understand it's an emotional issue for certainly for the family that's made the application. I've seen.
Yeah, I just like to see the end of this argument, either, you know, finish it or complete it.
Yep. Yes. John, did you want to speak as still on council?
Yes, thank you. I'll be briefer this time. The point I'd like to make is that the Shulastani family are seeking now in 2021 what the Ruptash family were seeking in 1995. And they found themselves it was absolutely prohibitive to do that, given the angle of the bank, the short distance from the road to the edge of the high water mark. They found out themselves that it was just impossible to build something to code that would allow them to do that. That's all they wanted to do, 25 years ago, and they were given the same opportunity. 25 years ago, they were given the opportunity, apply for a highway encroachment, build it to code, follow the standards, submit the drawings, pay for it, and do it in 60 days. Now, I don't know why we keep beating this thing around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to go once more, seeing no more councilors commenting. I'm going to go once more to the audience. And but then I do want to say my own feeling, and I haven't said much here as the chair. I think we can put a certain amount of time into this, but I really think I'd like to provide some additional time myself before we get to a decision. But having said that, I recognize it's in the hands of councilors. Any 3 councilors can settle this thing tonight. So I'm going to go first to Don Babineau. I see him there. Don, do you want to speak?
Hi. Certainly, in the meetings that I've attended in the past couple of years, the Shulastanis have been passionate and persistent in wanting to get access to the water. And it seems to me that to bring this to a proper conclusion, which is what I think everybody wants to do, is the Shulastanis requested that the councillors and probably Stuart and and whoever else needs to be involved, have a meeting at the site and have a discussion. So everybody's has every opportunity to state their case, look at the situation firsthand. And so I would just encourage what the Shulastanis had requested, that be granted. And I'm sure a time could be arranged when you could all stand on the bank for an hour and become more informed as to what can and can't be done. And I also want to recognize Councillor John Snell for educating us all with some more information that I wasn't aware of. So I appreciate the research that you've done, John, in presenting this to us. But I just highly encourage everybody to get together. We're a small village. It's a 3-minute drive. Stand together with the Shulastanis at the site and see what could and could not be done. I would highly encourage that happens.
Thank you very much, Don. Okay, for the last time now, I'm going back to, I'm going to go to John first because Ben, you've still got an image up. So John, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. I would like to make a couple of responses to what the councillor said. The first point is that those who do not have access to a dock applied to the council previously to get access to the beach through a staircase, and the council granted those applications based on policy 137. So I encourage the council to please read or remember or try to familiarize themselves with policy 137, and especially with the case of 4116 and the same property 3762 Marine Avenue, which previously granted access to the beach, and the highway encroachment agreement was granted to them because they did not have access to a dock. Secondly, those who do not have access has certain, and also there is no public access near or close the residence of 3762 Marine Avenue. So I think those road end locations which Councillor Snell may refer to are not close to 3762. So, and the third point is that Mr. Shulastani also said it many times that the staircase has been used privately for 50 years. If the council decides that a private access cannot be granted, Mr. Shulastani, I believe, takes no issue with making the staircase public. So I believe that clarifies any misunderstanding. I believe the only reason that the private sign was up, that it was private for over 50 years. If the council suddenly decides that no, the property no longer will provide the private access, I believe the public access would also be great, because there is no close by public access, and the family, the father and the mother, they are disabled person, as you know. One of them has a heart condition, other one has knee arthritis, so they cannot walk to any close by. Well, actually, there is no close by beach access, so they cannot walk to any of those sites. And the last point I would like to make is that I believe we should leave the steepness of the ramp to the contract decide, and the designer who designed the staircase to make it such a way that a disabled person can walk down the stair with a cane. Thank you. I believe we should leave it to the contractor and those designers, rather than prejudging in advance whether a staircase can or cannot be made such as a disabled person can walk down the staircase.
Okay, thank you, John, and I appreciate you addressing the point that Sherry had raised, and I think we'll all agree that technical aspects are technical aspects. Okay, now, and I appreciate your summary. Ben, your hand is up again for the last time, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you.
I've got an echo then.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So first, I would like to say what Sherry Chisholm said: never make assumptions. I think that's the issue that has been in the past, and unfortunately, it's being repeated most of the time. So I would like to say that some of the information that were presented by Councillor John Snell were not correct. I actually would question his source for such information. And also it signifies the importance of presenting the materials, including the highway encroachment agreement granted to the owner of 3762 Marine Avenue in 1995. It signifies the importance of showing the resolution, and I have a copy of it. The village has a copy of it. It was included in our presentation material, but for unknown reason to us, it was not included in the agenda for the public to see. It is very easy for one person like Councillor Snell to present information and the public to take it as the law or as basically an authoritative research when it is not true. I have evidence to contrary to what Councillor Snell stated to the public, and I would like an opportunity to present the information to prove
Ben,
that the information presented by Councillor Snell was wrong. One important piece of information I should make a note of, which also signifies which actually brings to question the interests of Councillor Snell, which is that
Okay, Ben, you've been muted. I'd like
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, no, look, Ben, I'd like to say the issues that we're dealing with are issues of determining.
No, excuse me. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know what part of my information you heard. One of the most important part was that I raised a conflict of interest issue with Councillor John Snell, and I would like to state the reason why this conflict of interest exists. Mr. John Snell is the president of Swift Heron Society, which is the immediate neighboring dock, wharfage in front of our property. And I should point out that the dock he's using today was originated by an application of the owner of our property, 3762 Marine Avenue. So that was a key piece of information that Mr. John Snell left out. And it would have been very important if he said that, because he would not be able to, that question actually undermines all the information that he presented as his research and the public to take them. That actually signifies a major conflict of interest issue, because
Ben, I'm going to cut you off there. I don't think it's productive to get into questions about people's motives, et cetera. We have a certain number of facts in front of us. I think some has been presented tonight. I urge you to stay away from this. And John, I will come back to you, but I really sense we've put a good deal of time into this. Ben, you're simply, the question will be whether or not statements that are made are factual or not, and ultimately council will satisfy itself on that.
I have evidence in support of the information.
Well, if a particular situation is the case,
So is a
have evidence
conflict of
to that
interest
effect.
not?
I'm sorry, I'm not controlling the mute here. I don't know why it's coming and going. I'm just going to say, I'm conscious that we put a good deal of time into this. If you have facts, you will have an opportunity to bring them forward. But I would urge you to avoid questioning people's motives, and I would urge everyone to remain in that position. But having said that, John, I will come back to you in just a moment. Don, do you want to speak again?
Yes, I'll just make a quick point. Mr.
Sorry.
Schuler's.
John, just a moment. Sorry, it was Don I was turning to there because he had his hand up.
Oh.
Don Babineau, and then we're going to leave the audience.
I'm sorry.
You're okay? Okay, thanks, Don. Okay, I'm now leaving the audience. I'm going to come back to council and then hopefully wrap this up for tonight. So I'm going to start with John Snell.
Yes, thank you. I would like to just correct Ben Shulastani's challenging of the documentation I was using this evening. And in fact, I got all the answers I needed from the documentation they provided in support of their original application.
Which was quite thorough.
That's right. They produced for us all to see in their presentation the report to council prepared by Larry Scott on behalf of the application by the Ruptashes on August the 10th, 1995. The Shulastanis produced this. Here it is. And I just read it. They obviously, it goes back far further than any records
Is it in
I've
the
got.
agenda?
Also in the Shulastani report was the staff report that was produced afterwards. I'm just basically just reading the complete document that you submitted, where you only chose to read half of it. Thank you.
In any event, I'm not going to get into further exchanges on that for the moment. Thank you, John. I mean, the documentation is the documentation. If people have additional material to present to council, they'll have that opportunity. So Lisa, I'm going to come to you as the only other councillor I've got with a hand up at the moment.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. Thank you very much to all the Shulastanis for everything that you presented tonight and for all the comments and concerns of each and every resident that have spoke, including all our councillors. One of the, excuse me, the Mr. Shulastani made comment about that there's no pathway or access to the beach close to their home. Well, it's in front of 3702 Marine Avenue, which is just a few doors down from them. It's the one that the divers use all the time. It's just a path, but it's there. And as far as the HEAs, they're not grandfathered. Every new homeowner, if a HEA dies with the owner of the home, from what I understanding, and through the chair to Lorna, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they die with the homeowner when the homeowner sells, and there has to be a new application made. My understanding was always that the HEAs that the Ruptash made application for was under certain conditions precedent that were never completed, to my knowledge. I don't know. The stairs look like they were, and they don't look like any of the conditions that were in that report were ever completed. So I don't know that that happened. And that was 3 owners, at least 3 owners, possibly 4 before the Shulastani spot. HEAs are not grandfathered. I just want to make that very clear for those that aren't aware of that. I have a very big concern that, again, the Shulastanis have and always have asked for private access, not public access, but private access. And let's just say they agreed to have public access there. They're going to pay for it and include the carry the insurance on it. I don't think that can happen. I don't know how that kind of agreement can happen between the municipality, a private homeowner, and the public. That's just boggles my mind as somebody that works in the legal field. A conflict of interest, I was quite disappointed that that was brought up, because I don't think Mr. Snell, Councillor Snell, has a conflict of interest in any regard in this matter, and I will support him in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look, I want to draw this to a close tonight. It's been an extensive amount of time. I appreciate there are people with strong feelings probably still out there. And I appreciate that it's totally in the hands of council as to what they wish to do. My personal preference is that we accept the advice and the input we've had tonight, and we provide an opportunity for a response to the staff report, which was referenced by the Shulastanis. Personally, I haven't decided whether I want to spend time down at the site. I'm quite happy to accept a written summary of that situation, but if others wish to go down, please feel free. Anyway, I'm in the hands of council. We do have a recommendation. There is no, if I'm correct, and I'll ask through our CAO, we don't have a motion that's been moved and seconded yet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Correct. So being dreadfully subtle, if someone wanted to move that we defer this for a subsequent meeting, I'd be appreciative, but at the same time, it's entirely in council's hands.
I'm sorry, Councillor Drake, what would be the reason to defer it to the next meeting?
because additional information is being proposed, would be provided by the Shulastanis. I'm sensitive to the point that we ultimately have to deal with facts. We don't
Yeah.
deal with opinions. And,
Right.
and I also appreciate that, in fact, something that's very sensitive to them, of course, they probably became aware of only a few days ago. And if we consider all the time that's been spent on this, I think they may well wish to go through that and offer comments to council. Ultimately, this will be a very substantive decision when it's made. Yeah, I'd love to see some kind of solution. I don't see one obviously here, but I would like to give them the opportunity to respond to what was in the report. And since this has been dragging on now for longer than any of us wish, I don't think another few weeks is going to end it. Sorry, it's going to be a catastrophic addition. But having said all that, it's up to the three of you. You can now do as you wish.
Okay, but then it would be they respond, then we respond with another report. How I
No,
just,
No,
okay.
these things eventually come to an end, you know, and there's only so many facts now that are really being questioned.
Okay.
John, do you want to comment?
Yes, I mean, obviously we'd like this issue to come to an end. But basically, I think what's been suggested, and again from Sherry Chisholm, is that okay, if somebody wants to go and look at it and design something that would meet code and meet every other requirement that everybody else has to comply with, including any relevant regulations from the port, that's fine. I think in all probability, an engineer will come back and say it's physically impossible to build what you want, given the fact that you cannot touch the riparian zone, and so forth. But if the Shulastani family want to go out and get a proper engineer's report on the road, on and everything else to substantiate a claim, and if that and again it has to go via the port. There's a lot of people involved in this jigsaw. We are just a very, very small part. Obviously, everything has to be built to code. There's highway stuff to be dealt with and everything else. Okay, so if we don't want to, clearly we're not going to be able to resolve it tonight. Then put the Shulastani family to task to get a professional engineer, do a proper survey, and take it from there. I have no problem with that. I don't want any council time on it, spent on it. I don't want any village money spent on it, and that's the end of that. And and I think that's basically it. So I have no problem in deferring it, providing that what comes back is a sound, proper engineering drawing, construction standards. All the codes have to be met. And of course, it has to be in full agreement with what the port's current policy is. And so it could be a bit of a challenge. Thank you.
Okay, so let me direct a question to Lorna first. Provided this is not private, but is rather public, offhand, is it possible? I mean, I wouldn't want people to spend a huge amount of time and effort if they're simply going to run into a legislative or legal barrier. And I appreciate you may not be able to answer right now, Lorna, but this is a substantive change because the proposal we had was private. If in fact it is not private, but rather public, can you say offhand whether there's an absolute barrier to this, or would you have to do more research?
I don't know if I could say it's absolute, but I would say that the BC Riparian Areas Protection Regulation covers this.
Yes.
The Bedwell Bay Sustainability Plan covers this, and the DFO Maintenance of Riparian legislation covers this. So any riparian area,
yeah,
it's very highly legislated. That's all I could say for sure.
Then I would recommend that we convey to the Shulastanis in writing what issues they would have to address. Because in this kind of process, once people have been involved and are this emotional about it, I simply think it's critical that you do these things by a written exchange. So, John, you didn't make a motion, but if you did, would you be comfortable with that, and that we provide a written set of conditions that we would like a response to?
Yes, that would be fine. Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, there's plenty of guidelines, both in the with regard to movement across the riparian zone. Those people that have built docks and wharfs, etc., in the last 2 decades have had to comply with those same rules. And fine, another couple of weeks. I mean, it was providing all the the thing is properly professionally spec'd out, and it meets all the requirements of the laws as far as riparian zones are concerned, and everything to do with the port. That's fine. It still has to, it is completely new territory.
Yeah.
Because for the longest period of time, there is no policy in place to grant a highway encroachment to anything other than a staircase for access to a floating structure. And I believe our CAO can verify that.
I think, John, we wouldn't be looking for an HEA anymore if it was a public access point. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, because
that's correct.
I think we're at a stage now where I think we need to provide in writing what we would seek back. And I do appreciate the Shulastanis want to reply to the report we have in front of us, and this would give them time to do that.
You're correct. It would have to be a full public access if anything was to be done. You certainly couldn't. Have a private access has not been available to anybody for several decades.
I appreciate that, and that's been made clear to me on a couple of occasions.
Thank you. I'd like to stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Carolina, and then I'll go to Lisa. We still don't have a motion on the table, I would point out.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Drake. My question to this council is, will this council be prepared to provide the same opportunity to everybody that lives on Marine if they wish to do so? We need to think about that too, because I think opening the door just in front of one property and not and ignoring the others if they wish to do so, that is unfair in my view. So if we do something like that, and I would expect that everybody on Marine Drive has the same opportunity to build on their dime a public stairs, a public access to the shore in front of their houses. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, I take 2 points from that. One, that it's, as is always the case with council decisions, you have to consider the precedents it sets, and I fully agree with you. That's an important dimension. And the second thing I would take from you is it's probably not easy to get your vote on this if it stays exactly the way it is. And that's perfectly appropriate for a council. Lisa?
Just very brief again, I just sort of was going to say exactly what Councillor Clark said. But again, secondly, if this is permitted, I just don't understand how a private homeowner would pay for all of this only to permit the public access. I mean, that's a real concern in my book. And again, the third thing was, I see there's a comment here from Ash Shulastani saying that they are the only people on Marine Avenue with no access to the beach, which is untrue, as we already know there's 5 access points along Marine Avenue, one which is just a few doors down from them. Okay. And that's the last I'm going to say on this matter. Thank you very much.
And I am not going to go back to the audience. I'm sorry for those of you waiting. We've gone back and forth 3 times. We are going to have another opportunity subsequently to discuss this if anyone on council is prepared to make a motion.
Councillor Snell, would you like to make the motion because you were talking to Councillor Drake about it? I can second.
Would you like to, maybe Bruce, Councillor Drake, you would have some sort of wording that would
Yeah, if
would
I
be
could,
appropriate. I think we want to capture the fact that that this would have to consider a public access,
yes,
and that public access would have to meet all the criteria of anything going over the riparian zone.
I would, if I could suggest, if I might, John, if I can, Councillor Snell, if I can just ask our CAO, is it appropriate and am I able in the chair to make a motion, Lorna?
You could suggest a motion
Let me suggest a motion.
to one of the council members
Thank
to
you.
make, your worship.
And look, it's been a long time. I appreciate it's been a long session. So I would be happy to hear a motion that we table this matter until such time as we've provided an opportunity for the proponents to reply to a written list of issues that council would like answers to. John, I think you've described that in more detail, but it leaves it open for council to craft that information as to what it is council would like to see. It also means that we don't go to a vote tonight, which I just think would be too rapid in my opinion.
Okay.
Is anyone prepared to make that motion?
I confident that it can be between yourself and the CAO. A motion can be drafted that would capture everything we've talked about.
Mhm.
I would ask.
Yeah, go ahead and have the motion, and then I guess I would just have a question about that we're asking the proponent to to provide an opportunity for the proponent to reply to a written request.
There's two parts. So that's one, because they requested it, and I think it's reasonable given the history of this case. And secondly, that we in fact would indicate, as Councillor Snell pointed out earlier, we would indicate what we would want back before we would consider moving any further on the possibility of a public access point there.
Okay. And perhaps that I could work with Councillor Snell to draft that.
Please, if you could.
That would be fine.
All right. So it's now, that's moved then, John?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a seconder on council?
Second,
Councillor Clark, any further discussion by council?
yes, I would just like to point out, like I have a little draft here just to make sure we're on the same page. Table this matter until such time the proponents provide in writing. Would it make sense to say a response to all challenges presented on staff report? That would be one part of the motion. But I'll just second the motion that we agreed on and go from there.
So it's been moved and seconded. Lisa, did you want to comment? Your hand is up, Lisa. You have to unmute.
Yes, through the chair to Lorna, can you just repeat the motion in full that's just been placed on the table? I'd like it to come from staff.
Paula, do you want to do that, please? So.
She's mute.
No, you're muted. Sorry.
Okay, so if I've got some of the wording wrong, if you could help me out. That the motion or the item be tabled until such time that the proponent is provided an opportunity to reply to a written request, and that the village would indicate what the village would want. I have back before consider moving forward on public access. So what we would want provided.
Yes.
Provided before the village considers moving forward on public access.
That's pretty close, and we could
I think that's
wordsmith it a bit.
I think that's close enough. A little bit of words.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So just so everyone is clear who sat through this up to this point, this would seek two things, right? The village would lay out precisely what information it wanted, and that really flows from John's observation of the technical challenges possible at this site. And secondly, there's also an opportunity provided for the proponents to reply to the report, which they would only have seen a few days ago. And then we would expect to come back to this once we've taken those, dealt with those steps. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by council? In the interest of time and appreciating we're undoubtedly going to come back to this, I'm not going to go out to the audience because we're going to run out of time in this meeting, and it's only the first of more than one, I'm sure. So I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
I see Carolina, Lisa. Oh, you froze. Lisa seems
Could
to
you
have
show
frozen.
I
that
freeze?
again?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you in favor then, Lisa, or?
I'll give it one more kick at the can. Sure.
Okay. So then the motion passes.
Okay,
Thank you,
everyone's in
everyone. Look,
favor.
This sort of issue is extremely difficult. I appreciate the patience. particularly
Absolutely.
everyone involved, and it's there's no easy resolution. Feelings are very strong, and it's not clear to me there's a solution, but I appreciate everybody who's trying to move it forward. So with that, can we get our mayor back?
Could we have a 10-minute recess at this?
Oh, absolutely.
that work?
It will return. So the time now is, I have 8:37.
37, right.
So let's make it 8 minutes at 8:45.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mayor Ross. Okay, you have to unmute Mayor Ross.
All right, hello, everyone. So I understand that there's been a recess for people and that we will now be on 5.2. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we have just finished a recess, Your Worship.
Okay, so I will, 5.2 is a report from Stuart Novak, Public Works Emergency and Preparedness Coordinator. And I will get him to do it. And then at the conclusion of that, we can go through any questions and then we'll receive it for information.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is a result of a question that was brought forward to Council asking for clarification relating to bylaw 518, parking bylaw. Specifically, it's asking about the parking space, or I should say the driveway space between the property line and the road. So there's two sections in bylaw 518 that speak towards this. One is section 46, prohibited parking, and the other one is section 43, unlawful parking. Section 46 states, no person shall stop, stand, or park a vehicle in front nor within 1 meter of a public or private driveway. So the bylaw officers, I should say the bylaw officers, use this section when a vehicle is parked on the road shoulder or the road and is within 1 meter or partially blocking the driveway. So in other words, that is the section that we use if somebody is parked on the shoulder, parallel to the road, generally speaking, and will either park too close to the driveway or actually edge up on into the driveway. The second section, section 43, actually speaks towards the ability of a resident owner to be able to tow a vehicle away if a vehicle is parked on their property. So it tells us that the owner of the property becomes the agent for the vehicle that will give it permission to tow a vehicle to a private parking lot. In other words, you can't sell it or anything. It has to go to a place of storage that is safe. So to summarize, if a vehicle is driven, on the shoulder and is edging onto the driveway, definitely yes, the bylaw officers will take it and or tow away. But if a vehicle is actually turning right into a driveway, for all intents and purposes, the bylaw department considers that public or the private owner's driveway. So we will never, unless we're asked by the actual owner of the property, we will never ticket or tow away a vehicle that is nose straight into the actual driveway, unless the owner of themselves phone us and ask us to remove them. We have to assume that it's a visitor or one of their cars. And really, that's the basis of this report.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. And we'll look at council first for, and I've got Councillor Clark.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Ross.
You're welcome.
So through the chair, I have just a couple of questions here. So on the second page of the report, it says that if a vehicle is driven and parked into a private driveway, provided the vehicle is not parked in such way that part of the vehicle protrudes onto the road, the bylaw officer will not ticket it or tow the vehicle from private driveway. But then it says here, if an owner of a property phones the bylaw officer stating that the vehicle is parked in the driveway, the bylaw officer may assist in the owner in towing the vehicle. So prior to towing the vehicle, in this case, let's say the vehicle it's fully on someone's driveway, will we be able to also ticket them, or just to call the tow truck and get them towed away?
Yes, there is a fee or a fine, I should say, for that as well. So yes, it would be ticketed and towed.
And that would be the case, because the second paragraph from what I'm reading here, so again, the last page, 1 to the third paragraph, before the summary, it says, if an owner or property phones the bylaw department stating that the vehicle is parked in their driveway, the bylaw officer will come, but it doesn't state if, will that be the case if the car is partly parked on village property as well? Because if it's got like 2 tires on village property and most of the car is actually into the driveway, then it will be up to the resident to call the bylaw officer to ask for assistance. Is that correct?
If a vehicle is parked in a driveway, even if it's your vehicle in your house, and you've actually got the rear end of the vehicle that is out onto the road and creating a safety hazard for the vehicles driving on the road, there is the option to ticket that vehicle for just because it's becoming a hazard.
Okay, but if
So-
if it's not impeding the road, if it's not on the road, but still has 2 tires on municipal property and 2 on private property, then the only way to deal with this will be the resident to call the bylaw officer and ask for assistance. Is that correct?
Yes, because the bylaw officer, in other words, if the car is driven straight into the driveway, but is in the space on that driveway between the owner's property line and the edge of the road, we can only assume that we cannot make an assumption that it is a person that's going to the park and just parking in there. The complaint has to come from the owner in this particular case. We're not going to
Yes.
be ticketing any vehicle that is nose straight into someone's driveway, just because we can never tell exactly where the property line is anyways. And plus, as a homeowner, you have the right to unobstructed access to the roadway. You have basically a road right of way when you have your occupancy. So
Right.
for that reason, we make the assumption that that whole driveway is the owner's.
And plus, we can never assume that is a parks visitor. It could be a resident, friends visiting also, right? So you wouldn't go there and ticket because it wouldn't make sense. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark, and Councillor Wilder. Did you want to be on, or?
I did have my hand up, but Stuart just said what I was going to say. It's like most people's driveways also are part of municipal lands as it is. You don't know, and people won't know where your property lines start or end. I come off my road, off Main Avenue, and I pull into my driveway. I would assume that the top of my driveway is my driveway, even though it really is municipal land, but it's my driveway and I have an unobstructed a right of way to use that privately. So if somebody was parked there, even though it really is municipal land, I'd just pick up the phone and say, can you come and get these people off my driveway? They're not visitors here. I just saw them take a whole bunch of floaties out of their car and walk down to the beach.
They're not your visitors, right?
My visitors.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank
Yeah,
you,
so Stuart said
Councillor.
exactly basically what I was going to say, but
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for calling me.
thank you very much. Didn't want to miss you. And so I'm looking to see now with the audience if we have anybody. I think we've exhausted council, and I'm taking a look for the audience, and I'm not seeing anybody with the audience. So I'm seeing none. I'll come back to council, and it would be appropriate this time to receive the report for information. So a motion from.
So
Councillor
moved, but
Clark.
with one slight correction. Peter Strzok's name is, surname is, under background is incorrectly spelled.
Does it, right, The C's not there?
There's no C in struck.
There's no C, yeah.
Yeah. In Peter Struck. Okay,
But I, so moved.
okay, so move,
Second,
seconded. Clark moving, Wilder seconding. It's on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I call that the affirmative carries and it's unanimous. Okay.
I want to thank Peter Struck for bringing this forward to clarify this.
Okay. And we're on to item 5.3.
Yes, your worship, the noise bylaw, first reading at the last council meeting. And it is now being brought back along with fees and charges bylaw for second readings of both of them.
Okay. So it's on the floor right now. And I see that we have some amendments submitted by Councillor Drake.
Councillor Drake, you're muted.
Has it been moved to the floor for discussion?
No, it has not. No.
Okay, so
Yeah, so I have submitted some recommendations for amendment. So I will move second reading with the amendments that I had submitted to bring this to the floor.
okay. So
Would
to
you
do
like me
that,
to?
oh.
I could read those, your worship.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that the Village of Balcarra Noise Bylaw 586, 2021, Section 3, General Regulations be amended as follows. B, inserting the words, quote, in the opinion of a bylaw enforcement officer or peace officer would reasonably be expected to. And that would be after the word noises. And the second amendment is change Monday through Friday on section C1 before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. to read Monday through Friday before 7 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and change Saturday, which says before 9 a.m. and after 7 p.m. to read Saturday before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. So in those two wordings changes, rather than having the noise on for those two cases between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., it would be 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then D, change Monday through Friday before 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. to read, that's D, small letter I, Monday through Friday before 7 a.m. and after 5 p.m. And little I2, change Saturday before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. to read Saturday before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. And insert the following after D. The chief administrative officer may relax time limits on a case-by-case basis in writing. Residents on the village distribution list will be notified of any relaxation of time limits. So Councillor Drake moved those amendments.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and looking for a seconder at this point. Councillor Snell, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I have some concern that we're dealing with this issue right now. At the last council meeting, I expressed concern that the noise issue had crept above everything else on the strategic list. There's a lot of issues outstanding at the moment. We've got water issues, we've got the tree issues, we have the long-term planning issues to deal with that are all more important and more urgent than this. And I think just the feedback we've had in the last little while would suggest that there's a few villages that feel the same way, that there are other issues they'd prefer us to be getting on with. The official community plan, of course, is the big one. So my only, I would prefer this item to be postponed for a while until we get ahead of some of the other issues that are on the tape we are dealing with. So, and I think we've seen from the suggestions that Councillor Drake has suggested are quite valid, and I think there would be a lot more forthcoming from our villager when we get into it deeper. And I would fear that this could be a bigger subject than we anticipated, consuming more time than we really want to spend. So I would be in favour of postponing this for a little while, but I'm happy to hear the comments from others. Thank you.
So are you moving an amendment to postpone it definitely or indefinitely right now, or just trying to ascertain?
I would move to postpone it. I'm not sure what the protocols are, because it's already gone to first reading, and here we are looking towards a second reading. So whatever the protocols are, whether to postpone it, certainly not indefinitely, but until such times as it makes its way onto the strategic plan list, as other items have. So as again, I'm not sure of the terminology, if we can table it at this point or we postpone it, but it's the same effect. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just go through to Lorna. Councillor Snell's asked a question about postponing it, either straight or indefinitely. You want to give him some advice on that?
Your worship, I think that would just up to council at this point.
Okay.
The bylaw has had first reading.
Yeah.
So it would be up to council if they wish to proceed.
Yeah, so he can postpone it or he can postpone it indefinitely, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, John, if you want to have that amendment on the table, you want to pick between one of the two?
It is a very old bylaw we're replacing. However, it has stood the test of time. So I don't like the idea of indefinitely, but I would like it. Obviously, it does need to be addressed, and Councillor Drake has made some very good suggestions, and I'm sure a lot of other good suggestions would be forthcoming from our villagers as well. So I think we would invite comments by mail or any other way to get some more village feedback on it. So I guess it would be, I'm not so sure indefinitely is the right word, but certainly it is an item that would most certainly now make it to the strategic plan list when we put the next one together. So I would certainly postpone it until such times as we revisit the strategic plan and reprioritize our issues. So if you wanted to put a time frame on it, I would postpone it until such times as we put our next strategic plan together, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you would, the trigger for that, it would come back once item 1 to 6, and then the other 3 items are taken care of, correct?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
Okay,
yes,
sure.
Yes. I think our villagers are expecting us to respect our strategic plan. We put a lot of work into it, and the villagers gave us some good feedback to it. So I think we owe it to them and to ourselves to follow the strategic plan. We're obviously going to adjust as we go along to emergencies and things that crop up. But I don't think either the old noise bylaw or the new bylaw, even with Councillor Drake's amendments, would actually change anything that's actually happening in this village right here and now today. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get a seconder for that, if we have one.
I'm going to actually second that.
Okay, Councillor Wilder, so it's seconded, it's on the floor. John, do you want to open up?
Me again?
Well, I'm just asking, it's now officially on the floor. You're not obligated to. If
No, I think I made my point.
Okay.
I believe we should hold back on this issue and attend attend to items that have been identified by ourselves as being of a higher priority, and that we revisit it again when we review our strategic plan and how far we've got. We could find that, you know, earlier than our next strategic plan, which may be a year from now, it comes forward. But I think I don't want to repeat myself.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
I think you get the idea.
Sure, let's go to Councillor Drake then.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no objection to Councillor Snell's proposal. The only risk we face is that we have a problem actually occur, and fortunately we don't have many, but we actually had a problem occur where the new bylaw would have addressed successfully and the old one won't. I think that probability is very low, one. And two, if that were to happen, we're able to pass an amended bylaw probably within no more than a month. And so I'm not uncomfortable with this. I agree with Councillor Snell's point that we have a list of priorities and we really ought to be focusing on those.
Okay, any other speakers? Councillor Clark?
Hi, yes, it's something, you know, that I would like to review at some point, the noise bylaw, but with the points made by Councillor Drake and Councillor Johns now, I think that makes a lot of sense for us to postpone this. I also read a letter that's been sent to us that also resonated with me quite a bit. So yeah, I will support deferment. Yeah, the defer the bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, so the amendment to postpone, right? Okay, and let's go to Brian Hirsch, please.
I just want to support John Snell, Councillor Snell, in this regard. We spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 sessions on the strategic plan, and suddenly this noise bylaw thing is brought forward. It appeared to me to be a surprise to the councillors at the last meeting. So I think let's stick with the strategic plan, where a lot of debate, I think, went on with it, on and on and on. And let's execute that first, you know, get the priorities right. I mean, things like the official community plan, I mean, let's get it started. It's so important. The water issue continues, and so on. Thank you.
Okay, Klaus? Thanks, Brian. Klaus?
Thank you. I just want to say, I think this is council doing council's work very well. And I want to commend everyone for being able to speak to this and honestly look forward to having a very detailed discussion of noise and the effects it may have, not only to villagers with short-term noise exposure, but also villagers who may have long-term noise exposure. So thank you very much for considering this issue the way you have, and I support Councillor Snell's motion. I would like everyone to see whether or not they can support it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Klaus. I put my hand up to speak to this, and I want to, first of all, I want to thank John for bringing this forward. I also want to thank Klaus for a very good letter that spoke to this. My only concern is this, and I'm going to support the motion, but I want to be able to talk a little bit about strategic priorities and what we do and why we do it. So when it came as a surprise to council, we set an agenda and we move it out to council, and council sees it then. And as you're seeing unfold right now, this agenda becomes a property of council. So the work of 3 votes carries the day. On this one, and I think the piece is, the existing bylaw goes back a long way, I believe 1981. It involves a fine and jail time. So the only piece that I want to signal is this is connected to another couple of, the noise bylaw regulates other things that the village can do. I believe that our village operates very, very well on people, neighbors, and people talking to each other and figuring out issues. That's why that bylaw has carried for those years. But there's also pieces where we may be put in a position where, and I think Councillor Drake has alluded to this, where something may come up and our ability with other parts that look to be regulated and that work between villagers, because some of these people may not be villagers, they may be people that come from time to time. And we want to make sure that when that good approach does not work, if we find that we're in a position where we do not have a way to use the last resort, which is to find people, that we have the ability to bring it back. So I'm going to support it on the understanding that Bruce Drake articulated, that we would have the ability to bring it back, and we would have the ability at that point to talk with people and to move it forward if that became an issue. If it's not an issue, we won't need to do that. So thank you. Okay. Seeing no other comments from either council or the audience, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Okay, the amendment carries, and we are now at the position where this has been postponed, correct? Okay. So we're on to, Lorna, we're fine to move on to the next item.
Yes, your worship, item 5.4, which is on table. So I'll just ask Paula to
Right.
show that. We have the
And
RCMP,
this is your amendment that came on earlier, right?
right? Yes. Okay, your worship, I have outlined on the right-hand side items that council have dealt with to date. And I would just like to point out that in addition to strategic planning priorities, we also operate under statutory regulations. So things that don't show up on the strategic planning list, staff are still working on to bring to council. And items that are regulatory or statutory regulations would be things like the budget and audit. And so just so you know, right now, staff are working on the annual report and on the report, that it's a statutory regulation that these be brought to council in June. So they will be coming back to you in the near future. So the first item is the asset management financial plan sustainability item on the strategic planning priorities. And I'm pleased to announce that we've been advised that the grant application has met the criteria of the application and is now proceeding to the stage 2 of the review. And we don't have any timeline as yet for how long the stage 2 review takes, but I'm really pleased that it has moved to stage 2 of the review. And then under item number 2A, which is emergency preparedness and fire smart. As you're aware, BA Blackwell attended a council meeting recently, and they are currently in the village working on the community wildlife grant. So they are working on the Fire Smart program with that grant. And a second grant application has been submitted by the fire chief in Port Coquitlam. And that grant will include Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Belcarra. And so that will further provide further work on the community wildlife grant and emergency preparedness. And in the 2D, water capacity for firefighting for the reservoir, a federal grant application has been submitted. And our MP is aware of that grant that has been submitted. And we are hoping that is moving through the process in Ottawa at this time. And the next item I would like to report on is Belcarra Community Pathways and Trails. And as you're aware, this recently also was brought forward to council. And the grant has been submitted to TransLink and has been approved for submission to TransLink for that grant. So that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
Do you
And,
want this to stay on the screen or?
Sure, if there's any questions about it, we can have it either from council or from the audience. We can have it stay up for a second.
Sure.
So let's start with council. Any questions from you? Let me just,
I have one, Your Worship.
okay, go ahead if you could, Bruce.
Yeah, just had a little trouble with the screen, the way it was aligned, but
Yeah,
managed to get my hand up. Yeah, just what I imagine is a typo under the 2A reference to Blackwell. Lorna, I think spell correction probably put wildlife in rather than wildfire there. You're muted, but I assume from your smile.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, that's
we weren't trying to
wildfire.
advance wildlife in the village. We've got lots of it.
Sorry, thank you. Wildfire, yes.
Yeah, I had the same question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
okay, and then thank you, Bruce. Thank you for those comments. Did you have further ones or?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, so I see no one else on council, but I see David Goodman. David, welcome.
You're muted.
David, you're muted. You're muted.
Muted now?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks. Are the grants available for us to see? The applications that go forward, are those available for us to see?
Sorry, to see or to seek?
Read, basically.
read.
I'd like to know what, for instance, under the Pathways one, I'd like to know what was submitted there. Is that available or not?
Well, it was pretty well what was discussed when the TransLink representative was at council.
I don't think anything specific was discussed at that point, Lorna. I'm just wondering if the grant is public information to the residents.
I think that would be up to council, Your Worship.
So David, you're looking at what, there was a motion that was passed at that meeting, correct? And then there was an application from that grant, from that application that was put
Yes.
forward based on the motion.
Right. Right, but I don't remember any discussion of what the specifics of the request should be. And so that's what I'd like to see now is what exactly is the village requesting from transit?
Sure. Well, let's take a look at that. We'll get staff to take a look unless council is concerned about that. And then let's look at what it is and then see if we can get that both to you and the public.
Thank you.
You're welcome, David. Thanks. Lorna, does that make sense? We'll take a look and then we'll come back at it. And I'm assuming the rest of council's fine with that. Or Councillor Snell, are you all right with that? Are you on for another question?
Yeah, I would like to sort of the answer to that one. I think if one was to go back and watch the recordings of the council meeting when the TransLink discussion went on, the visuals that were provided there were pretty clear as to what we could get, and there were a number of initiatives, you know, for roadside, you know, for pedestrian roadside safety, pathways, and everything else. And I think that was a pretty good presentation, and I think it's still probably online on the YouTube recording for everybody to see. So I could be wrong, but that immediately came to mind as to where we could see what's happening, because at the end of the day, we were given the presentation, we were shown what was available, shown some ideas, and invited to apply for a grant, and to accomplish a lot of that. So it's worth a second look at, as indeed all our meetings are worth a second look at. Thank you.
Exactly, John. Well, why don't we do this? You certainly point to that meeting where lots of information, lots of things came out, but let's also take a look in terms of what we provided, and unless there's a reason why we wouldn't share that, let's see if we can do that. Okay, does that make sense, Councillor Snell? And I agree that it's good to take a look at these meetings at least twice. Okay, and I'm gonna, if I can, I'm gonna go to Dawn. I kind of jumped ahead just because I thought Councillor Snell, so we'll invite you to speak now if you wouldn't mind.
All right. The point on the agenda, or on Lorna's report there in regards to applying for the grant for the water reservoir. Where are we at with the, we were supposed to have the engineer fella come back with his recommendations. Now, the water reservoir was something that the previous councilor, or the previous mayor, had thought that we might need at some point. To my knowledge, and maybe I'm not current, it hasn't been clearly decided as to, in fact, what it is we need. So I'm just curious as to how we apply for something when we're not committed to a specific course of action.
Okay, so do we have a councillor that wants to speak to that? Councillor Clark, go ahead, please.
Yes. So I don't know if it's going to be recalled by all, but when this grant was applied for, the previous mayor convinced council to apply for the grant prior to us knowing if we really needed the reservoir. And the reason was that there was a deadline for the grant. And the reason why that ended up, the amount, the dollar number ended up being on the budget or in the strategic plan, I can't remember, on the 5-year financial plan, it was to possibly at the time, stated by that mayor, was to show that we were willing to look into the project. So that was a decision. It wasn't made really by this council right now. It was made by prior to the by-election under those, that's what it was used back when we had that discussion.
Well, you essentially just paraphrased what I stated already.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, it sounds that is this a new grant that we've applied for now?
No, that's the same. That's the same. And I remember there was some statements made by the mayor at the time saying, oh, we're going to have that reservoir built by July of 2020. But the fact is you wouldn't even get a reply to the grant that we had applied until after spring of 2021. So there was some misinformation there and confusion, I guess.
Okay, so that grant was applied for a year and a half ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about that, a year or a year and a half ago. But we always knew since we applied that grant that we would get an answer just after spring of 2021.
All right, and where are we at in terms of? I remember a meeting back a long time ago, where our engineer, or water engineer, was charged with responsibility of coming up with 3 options with 3 different water flows, and I don't know if he got into his bunker COVID and hasn't surfaced yet, or what's happened. Why not heard anything from that engineer that was charged with that task? It must be 8 or 9 months ago now. Where is this mysterious man and important?
We'll let for someone else to handle this one. And I would like to hear the response as well.
Your worship, I believe that the report will be going to the water committee.
Yeah, the water committee is meeting very quickly. And it was one of the council passed at the inaugural meeting, a meeting with the mayor, with the representative from each of the committees. And this one was actually a meeting, was the first scheduled one, and it did not occur. And so it's occurring very quickly now. And so there will be discussions and with the representative, Bruce Drake, myself, the mayor, and with the committee, and it will be the same process as with the other committees or similar to that.
Okay, question wasn't answered. My question was, it must be at least 8 or 9 months ago, we had our water engineer was charged with coming up with 3 scenarios and the costs associated with those 3 different scenarios based on 3 different water flows. That's 8 or 9 months ago. When is that report going to be made available by that engineer?
Okay, so I don't mind tackling a question that I wasn't around when it started or when it occurred, but we, as a matter of both, I think, courtesy, will have that discussion with the water committee when we meet in the next while. And then we will come back and we will do like we did with every other committee, Dawn. We shared from a council perspective where we felt that committee had ended up. So I just think, and I guess it's a matter of how I operate, that when you have a number of committees, they should all be shown the same respect. So as much as people want answers, this newly constituted council made a decision to go through a process. It's a very even process. And at the conclusion of that process, we will share publicly.
The engineer, the water engineer, on 2 previous occasions has made his report. He presented his report at a council meeting and said, hey, this is where we're at. And then council made a decision 8 or 9 months ago to charge him with the responsibility of coming up with these 3 options, 3 water flows and costs associated with that. It has nothing to do with respect and process with the water committee at all, in my opinion. I'm simply asking, this guy was charged with the responsibility of coming up with these recommendations 8 or 9 months ago. I'm simply asking, when is that report going to be made available from that engineer? It's unacceptable how long that is taking for him to present that report. That report available, whether it be to the water committee or whether to be council or to all of us. When is that report going to be available?
So Dawn, I think you've done a good job reiterating your question. And we have given our answer. If anybody else on council wants to add to that, that's fine. But at this point, we have a different process right now.
Councillor Drake has his hand up. Maybe he has some
Sure, Councillor Drake.
insight.
Nothing that's going to make Don feel any more comfortable. I don't recall the specific assignment you're talking about, Don, but there are a number of things that we've tried to advance, and there are a number of things that are taking a lot longer than you or anyone else would hope. I can only say that, you know, there was a substantial delay introduced with the transition to this current council. And hopefully we'll have some further information shortly. But as to the report you're specifically talking about, I'm not anticipating such a report. So I don't recall specifically asking the engineer to do that, but I can only say that you know, we will be engaging with the water committee shortly, and that material is going to become public not long after.
I can tell you what.
There was a motion.
I remember.
There was a motion.
Excuse me, Dawn.
Okay.
Just hang on a sec.
Yep.
We're taking a little time on this, and it feels like there's some ground being recovered. But what I want to do is, Councillor Clark, are you looking to respond to this?
Yes, I just want to say that, yes, there was a motion that council did pass, previous council, about 3 different scenarios. for the engineer to approach the district of North Vancouver
Ah.
to see possible costs. Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So go ahead, Don, through me to whatever question you have, if you could.
Okay. The specific, I remember it clearly in the meeting, and he was charged with responsibility coming up with water, the water flows of 60, 90, and 120 liters is it per minute or per second? I can't remember. 60, 90, 120. And he was charged with the responsibility of going out, researching that, and coming back to the village saying, at 60, this is what you need to do. At 90, this is what you need to do. At 120, this is what you need to do. And this is what the cost associated would be with that. And that was, again, 8 or 9 months ago that council charged that engineer with that responsibility. Even though, Bruce, we've had Councillor Bruce Drake, we've had a delay because of the interruption with between mayors. That shouldn't have interrupted his ability in coming forward with a report.
Okay, Don, if I might just reply, look, again, if what you're referring to was the approach to the District of North Vancouver.
No.
No? Okay.
Oh,
well, then I'm lost. What I can recall is is 3 flow rates to be referred to the District of North Vancouver to request them to indicate what the cost of providing that would be and what the impact might be on us. But
yeah, that was the motion.
I think that's what Carolina is referring to.
That was the motion. Yeah.
Well,
but John is correct and Bruce is correct. You're talking about the same motion, both of you. But there was a motion and we're still waiting on that report. I'm waiting very anxiously on that report.
So my question is simply then, once again, and it's not with any disrespect to anybody, I'm just saying, after such a long period of time, 8 or 9 months, I'm surprised that nobody is aware of where and when we can expect this report that this fellow was charged with. And Lorna, in the past, I believe you were responsible for kind of keeping tabs on this stuff. Do you have any idea, number one, then what he was actually asked to do, and number 2, when we expect to get it from him?
So Don, if it's okay, one of the things that we always ask people to do is go through the chair. So you're actually posing those questions to our Chief Administrative Officer through me, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Lorna, did you want to make any comment on that?
I'm not aware of any report that's been received from the District of North Vancouver, Your Worship.
Okay.
That wasn't the question.
So why don't you rephrase that question again, Don, through me to Lorna, and let's see if we can bring this to a conclusion.
Our water engineer, I'm guessing that time frame 8 or 9 months ago, was given the task and charged by council to examine 3 different options on water flow. And so now I'm asking, because I'm getting vague answers, what in fact was the water engineer tasked to come back to us with, number 1, and number 2, when do we expect to get that? And you don't have, obviously I'm not going to get that answer now, but I would like to get that at the next meeting then.
Well, here's what we're going to do. I've indicated that we're going to meet with the water committee, right? We're going to go through the same process we did with every other committee. And if but for some circumstances that were just unavoidable, they would have been the first committee for us to meet with. And so there would have been some things probably coming forward. So Don, I mean, I appreciate the questions you've asked. And I think the certainty we now have is, I believe, but I'm new to this, right? But I think it was a council motion asking the engineer to communicate with the District of North Van. Is that correct? Wait, sorry, just for a second. Lorna and Carolina and Bruce, is that correct from what you understand?
That's correct.
Okay, so Carolina has given me the thumbs up, so I'm going to interpret. So that's the piece. So having said that, I guess what's going to happen right now is we're going to meet with the committee and we're going to listen and talk, and we're going to try and do some things. And then at some point, we will come back and council will be involved, and council's going to make some decisions and then share some information. And they will make those decisions, I would assume, exclusively in open meetings unless there is a requirement for them to be in a closed meeting. And you will know that most decisions are propelled to open meetings. Lorna, is that fair characterization of what we're going to do? Council, is that Councillor Wilder, you have your hand up, so.
I just wanted to, through the chair to Lorna, I understand that these delays have a lot to do with COVID, and that District of North Van has been working at 1/3 capacity, and they've never gone back to full capacity at all. And we are at the mercy of them. So I mean, our hands are tied. So, and please correct me, Lorna, if I'm wrong.
That's correct. As are all large municipalities throughout COVID, they've been working at basically 1/3 capacity. Yes. Mhm.
So thank you, Councillor Wilder. And John, I'm going to just, as a courtesy, let you have a few brief finishing up comments, and then we can move forward if we could.
My finishing up comments are the getting what's available from North Vancouver was only a part of it. And what I would highly encourage council to do at this point is to revisit the motion that was made that charged that engineer so many months ago and find specifically what he was charged with. I find it astounding that we're paying this thousands and thousands of dollars. He was charged with what I recall a 30, 60, 90 or a 90 and 120 liter responsibility, which probably would chew up $150,000 to get his. And at this stage, I find it astounding we're not able to get clear answers even as to what he was, or let alone why it's taken so darn long. So I'll be interested to see and hear what you make of this in the coming days and weeks.
So that's appreciate those closing comments. And I always look in terms of when we're talking about what we're paying people who are hired as consultants for us, I just think we should, it's probably useful to concentrate on what action they're doing or not doing, and not talking about money, because we don't know that till the end of the year when that's all reported out. Okay, but I appreciate your closing comments. And Don, I can say from the time before I was on council, I would come on from time to time, and often I would see you asking quite similar questions. So I appreciate your interest in this. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, Lorna, that may have done that piece. I'm not seeing anybody else. I think when
Just a
Don,
motion to receive, your worship.
yeah, I would just want to, and now I see there's no further speakers, so we'll have a motion to receive. So if Councillor wants to put that, Councillor Drake moving and Councillor
I'll second that.
Wilder seconding, and a motion to receive the report regarding the strategic planning priorities, received for information. Okay. So all in favor, council?
Aye.
Aye. And I note that the affirmatives carry it, and it's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. So we're on to the next agenda item, and it's the mayor's report. And there are two items, 6.1 and 6.2. If I could ask 6.1 to come up. Right now, I believe there is a graphic. So this is, I talked at the last meeting that there is a friendly mayor's challenge in pursuit of a very good cause. And that cause is us all taking care of each other. And this moved, we are, as you will note there, that we are part of a combined group, Port Moody, Anmore, and Belcarra. And in the morning, this morning, we were at 70%. And right prior to the meeting, we moved up to 75%. There's a friendly bet on this. I indicated before, I'm not even aware what the friendly bet is. I'm not too sure if the neighbors know, but the real part of it, the important part is every part that we move up from 70 to 75 to 80 helps protect all of us. So I want to thank people in Belcarra who've done that, including people that have gone forward to get their second vaccination shot. So really want to acknowledge people, and we will continue to, in the spirit of friendly competition, look to raise this number, but mostly in the pursuit of taking care of each other. So thank you. And then I have any questions on that? And then I'm going to move. I have just some comments on something that's come up recently. So you can see other people are doing well, and it bodes well for Fraser Health Communities. We've been one of the ones that's been most effective. So we're seeing some very, very good things. So I'm not seeing any questions on that right now. So I'm going to move to the second part, and I would just like to take a couple of minutes and talk about something that's happened recently. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released a 4,000-page report in 2015. It described the government-led policy as cultural genocide in regard to Indigenous young people. It detailed sweeping failure of the care and safety of these Indigenous children and the complicity by the church and government. Students were often housed in poorly built, heated, and unsanitary facilities, and often without proper food and nutrition. Many lacked access to trained medical staff and were subject to harsh and often abusive punishment. They were separated from their family, not able to speak their language or practice their culture. Justice Murray Sinclair, the Truth and Reconciliation Chair, shared in 2015 that it was estimated that over 6,000 children had died while at the residential school. So far, information about 4,100 children who died of disease or accident while attending residential schools has been confirmed. Justice Sinclair recently said, "We know that there are a lot of sites similar to the Kamloops residential school that are going to come to light." He said, "We need to prepare ourselves for that." The survivors talk about this all the time. The day after the discovery of 215 Indigenous children buried in unmarked graves at the Kamloops residential school, I want to thank the Belcarra Council. I want to thank Carolina, Bruce, and John and Lisa for joining myself on behalf of our community to lower our flag to half-mast, not simply because our policy made it available, we could do it, but because it was the right thing to do. It is heartbreaking for Indigenous people that have had this happen to them, and that more discoveries are likely to occur. No child should ever go to school and should not return home. No family should ever lose that chance to say goodbye in a dignified way. The survivors should not have to endure the memories. And as Justice Sinclair said in the speech, reconciliation is not an Indigenous problem. It is a Canadian one. Thank you. And I look forward to all of you in your individual ways working on reconciliation. Thank you. So we have number 7, bylaws. We don't have any items there as I can see. Or sorry, do we have anybody else from any of the committees who want to say anything? Councillor Clark, I think you may.
I just want to, well, to say 2 things. I promised a little while ago, and I'm sorry, I forgot I should have brought this information for it before. So we're losing our caretaker at the park, right?
Yes.
And so we don't know what's going to happen to that land yet. Metro Vancouver has not decided, but they will be hiring a company to do some policing during the night, just to make sure that everything, it's, you know, it's good on the park side. Another just short comment about parking. So we're looking to do our public meeting at the end, more towards the end of the season. Council does not have any meetings in August, and due to the amount of workload, you know, that staff has to accomplish right now, we're leaving this more for towards the end of the season, where we also will have a better understanding on how the paid parking at the park side will affect us. We already are starting to see quite a big difference in my view from last year to this year. I guess it's doing what it's meant to do, but we need to wait until warmer season. So, you know, July and August. And the third thing, I went back just on the previous subject that Don Babineau brought it up. I went back on my notes and I did notice that that council made a motion. It was on September 14th of 2020. And the motion on that, on the water flows, was that council direct the CAO and Chris Boyd, ISL Engineering and Land Services, to contact the District of North Vancouver to request options and costs on the fire flows of 60, 90, and 120 liters of water per second. So just dug that out. Thank you, Mayor Russ.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Clark, and appreciate that. And do we have, I've got one question from council, and Councillor Drake, you go ahead, and then we'll see if there's any questions out in the audience. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Clark for putting your hand on that. That's the only recollection I have. If that's what Don felt was a request for the engineer to give us a detailed study, it's not what I had anticipated. So unless there's something else, my feeling is we're at a dead stop until we hear from the District of North Vancouver, unless we want to spend substantial amounts of money ourselves. I mean, I have questions, as I'm sure the Water Committee has, about precisely what communications has happened to the District of North Vancouver and what we've heard back from them. But I was not aware that we charged our engineer to prepare an engineer's report. Thank you.
Okay, and I think Councillor Drake, I'm seeing a nod from Councillor Clark. In agreement with Councillor Drake, is that correct?
Yeah, just agreeing with his comments.
Yeah, okay. So, and I'm not, right now, I'm not seeing anything else from anybody in the audience. So if it's all right, we will move to number 7, bylaws. I don't see any items there. So we will move to correspondence and proclamations. And John, you had indicated earlier that you wanted to make an action item. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Do you want to just move that as let's move, why don't we let's delineate the one that I believe you want to move 8.4 out of there to be received, and you want to then move it as an action item in the next part, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so why don't we do, why don't you move 8.1 to 8.9, but not include 8.4, and move that motion? Does that make sense to you, John?
Yes, it does. I'd make that motion, yes.
Okay, and you've got Councillor Drake moving to second that, or just beaten at the end by almost. So it's on the floor right now. So on those ones, any discussion on council? Any discussion in the audience? I've got Jim Chisholm, but Sherry, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, it's me, Sherry again.
Okay.
You're saying to receive the correspondence. And I had a letter in, and I was rather hoping that the council would discuss it here during this meeting, where I'm suggesting I think Bruce may want to talk about it.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair. Yeah, thank you, Sherry. If you just stand by for new business, I think you'll see there is a response to your letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, so seeing no further speakers, we'll look to all those in favor of the motion to receive.
Aye.
Aye. And the affirmatives carry, it's unanimous. And John, you now have an action item that you want to move 8.4.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
8.4 is some copy correspondence from Colleen McDonald on some materials she supplied to the Mayor and Council of Port Moody. And you can see that the Sasamac Greenaway has gained considerable traction, over the last few months. And I believe it's something that every municipality should support. So I think it makes sense for us to, let Port Moody know that we've received it. We're enthusiastic towards it. And if they know that, maybe we pass that same sort of information on to the other municipalities and bodies that she's made the presentation to. It's something we all support as the Greenaway, and anything we can do to help in that regard, I think is well worthwhile. So a letter from council to Port Moody, pursuing that initiative, I think is a good thing. Thank you.
Okay. Council, any comments on that? Okay, not seeing any from council. I'll raise my hand and just thank John for putting that on the table. That initiative is part of ones that are happening all over Metro Vancouver, and they are actually poised and designed for larger districts to be able to access, or larger municipalities to be able to access those programs. And so I think if council's in favor of this, it would be very useful to do that. I saw Colleen McDonald yesterday when I was on a walk out, I guess, Belcarra Bay Road. And we spoke about this and she talked about this part, and we had.
Mayor Ross, you're muted yourself. So we missed the last 10 seconds of your.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I don't know how I did that. My hand was away, but thank you for grabbing on that. So the piece is, it's appropriate for Belcarra to encourage Port Moody to do it. They have access to those grants and that would be useful. Okay, so thank you. And we'll go, I'm not seeing anybody else on council. So let's go to Sherry Chisholm, if we could, please. Sherry, go ahead, please.
Yes, here I am again. This bicycle path and everything would come right into Belcarra and around and in Bedwell Bay Road and around and back out Marine Avenue, I gather. I've been noticing some survey work being done on Bedwell Bay Road. Is that related to this? The survey work that's being done? Or is that to do with the footpath?
Well, let's go through to our Chief Administrative Officer if we can, Sherry, and we'll pose that question and see if.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm not aware of any survey work being done on Bedwell Bay Road. When was that? Like in Belcarra?
Yes, right on Bedwell Bay Road, but maybe it's some private person.
Could be.
I thought it was probably municipal since it was on the high side of Bedwell Bay Road, but maybe it's some person who's doing it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not aware of it.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine then.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Deborah Struck, welcome.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, just to Sherry's question, they've been out surveying along different sections along Bedwell Bay on many days. So I don't think it would be for somebody private because it wasn't just in front of one property. There were many different sections. So I don't know. That's interesting that we don't know what was going on. So that's it.
Okay, well, I would say this, just an answer. It wouldn't be connected with this Port Moody one because the Port Moody Greenway is going to come up to Belcarra, not if it does, if it comes to fruition. The piece about whether who it is, I'm not sure, but I would say at any time, and I hope our Chief Administrative Officer doesn't mind, but if there's a concern about any surveying or whatever, just give the office a quick call. and we'd be
sure.
pleased to receive it. Okay?
Mhm.
Thanks, Deborah. And Councillor Wilder, please, go ahead.
Lisa, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. When I look at the assessment Greenway, it only comes up to the three-way stop at the lake. It doesn't continue around into, so that really is only Port Moody, not into Belcarra at all. When I look at this map.
Correct. It is correct. And I think that was a letter of support, right? Just to support Port Moody, if that's what I understand.
Okay, yeah, good. I just want to make sure, because somebody else said it was coming into Belcarra. I thought I heard. I'm going, it doesn't look like it to me. It looks like it stops at the three-way.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I won't jump.
No,
in.
I'm in favor of the, asking the Port Moody initiative, so.
Okay, so we have Deborah Struck, I believe you've got your hand probably down right now. Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
Yes,
Go ahead,
okay.
please.
Yes, thank you. If you looking at the May 27 letter that was addressed to Port Moody, it's a transportation route that would integrate with the existing facilities to link Port Moody's, Rocky Point, Old Orchard, Belcarra Park, and Sassamat Lake. So they're trying to, tie it all together so that you can basically go right from Rocky Point, pretty much all the way through to up to us. It's just joining, it's just filling in all the gaps. That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm not seeing anyone else, so I've got my hand up. So I think the other piece, John, they give a couple of routes there. And one of them is alternatively with proper placements of bollards, a safe and separated pathway could be created along one side of Bedwell Bay Road. So the grant mechanism, the greenways, is specifically for larger municipalities. So our job would be to support them on that application, encourage them if we want it. Okay. So, and I think that's what you've got on the table, correct, John?
That's a yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not seeing any other, anybody else in the audience. So why don't we look at, John's got Councillor Snell has a motion on the floor. So do we need it read back by our Chief Administrative Officer?
I don't have a seconder, Your Worship.
Oh, okay. I believe there was, okay. We now
Lisa
have
seconded.
Councillor Clark
Okay.
on a three-way
Lisa
tie.
seconded.
What's that?
Lisa Wilder seconded.
Okay, so you were on record from before, Lisa?
I
Okay.
believe I was,
Paula, do
unless
you
I
have-
was on mute.
Okay. Paula, you've got Lisa as the original seconder?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're set. We've got the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the affirmative carry, and I will call it unanimous. Okay, thank you. So we've moved into new business, and Councillor Drake, you have a notice of motion on the floor for new business.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I'd like to advise council of a notice of motion to amend our procedural bylaw number 356 of 2004 with respect to public question period, which is typically item 10 on our agenda. Specifically, I'll propose that public question period not be limited to questions or comments related to the meeting's agenda, but rather allow residents to comment on or ask questions about any topic of their choice. Just a couple of points on what I would anticipate proposing is that we start first with questions that do relate to the meeting. And once those are finished, you then go to others, that we set a limit of 2 minutes maximum for the questions or comments. And we require that people have their image on as well as their full name. And finally, that we set aside a maximum of 20 minutes for completion by 11 o'clock unless council specifically agrees to extend those times. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so that's a notice of motion. So it stands, as I understand, Lorna, without a seconder right now. And it will go forward to the next meeting, and then the Councillor Drake will seek a seconder to vote on that. Okay?
Yes.
To place it on the table. So that's definitely in order, and thank you. And any discussion on that? Well, probably at this point with council, we're fine with that. Is that correct? Just going forward? And is there anybody from the audience wants to make a comment? Okay. I'm not seeing that, so we can, we're now in public question period. So any questions? Councillor Snell.
Yes, I was going to bring something up under the new business side. I've noticed on a lot of the comments that have been going on through the evening, and also people I've been talking to as I've been walking around the village, the issue of beach access has come up from time to time. And a number of people are quite surprised that we have as many as 5 public beach accesses. 3 of them are marked, 2 of them are not. And I think it might be a good service to our villagers to just review the 5 that we have and make sure they're marked and made a little more inviting to the public. One of them has the appearance of being private and has a gate which was ordered removed a while back and was off for a period of time. And a lot of people have found out about that little beach, and it's nice to see families using it. But so I think we should spend a little while, if through your chair and the staff that maybe works, could open them out a little bit, put some signs down there advising people it is unmanned, or unserviced or unmaintained beach access, so that our villagers can enjoy it. It's a treat to see families down on the beach there enjoying it, and a few know about it, a few don't. But I think it's a good service to let everybody know where they are, and they're more than welcome to use them. We encourage them to use them, and a lot of those people that believe they don't have access to the water, in fact, have some very nice access to the water if they did but know it. So that would be, I would ask that the works take a look at that. Thank you.
So, John, on that, is it direction to council? Are you giving a notice of motion, which you would then?
No, well, I don't think it requires a notice of motion. I think it's something that it's work in progress that has been in progress for a number of years. I think Councillor Wilder is very familiar with all the paths and can probably give some background onto those, a little more background onto some of them. So I would invite Lisa to make Councillor Wilder to make a comment if she cares to, and have all our public access is made freely available and a little more inviting. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Wilder, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. If we're just talking about the paths and the access to the beaches, there are 5 that I'm aware of down on Marine Avenue. We've already talked about that. One of them is in the actual park. We're going to talk to the west part. It's past the gates, and then 100. I can't remember exactly what it was now. Because I measured it out. To one of the other accesses, the unmaintained trail, which has concrete stairs at the west end, at the bottom of Young Road, or bottom of West Road. There's another one. The third one would be, it's just past 3702 Marine, I believe. Yes, between 3702 and 3694 Marine Avenue is where the divers use it. It's just a pathway that it's unmaintained, and it's just, it's been used for a gazillion years. And all the divers use it, sort of in the middle of Marine there. And then there's the two down at the north end of Marine. One which is used to be a private and had a gate, and it's now been reverted back to the village. And then the one at the very end, which has an unmaintained access. There are also a number of trails throughout the village here, and which I would like to see brought back to our staff and our public works to maintain. I mean, I guess it's spring now, and they're so overgrown, it's really hard. We have to go down there with a scythe just to walk down them. And there are trails that go from, for example, Main Avenue down to Bedwell Bay, and then further down from Bedwell Bay back down to Marine Avenue. They need to be really cleared up. But anyways, those are them. And I'm happy to show anybody where all these access points are. If anybody wants to know, give me a call, and I'm happy to walk down there. I'm there almost every day with my dog, so give me a call.
Okay, so just so we can get, there isn't a motion on the floor, but you're directing staff to, John, to identify the trails and to share them with the public and make them accessible. That's what you're asking to be done?
I believe so, yes. I think staff are probably, are on top of them, and works probably attend to them from time to time, but I think they could do with a few hours.
Right.
Clean up some simple signage, and just be made more inviting for the public to use them. The one at the far end is particularly nice. The steps are very easy to negotiate, and there's a beautiful cleared sandy beach there with barely a rock on it. And I've seen, as I say, I've seen families with their beach mats out, really enjoying it. They're obviously residents, and in fact the parking is there's plenty of parking down there for residents. It's one of the few areas that does have it available. It's nice to see families using it. So everybody should be aware of it. And I think a lot of people that live in the Belcarra Bay Road are probably unaware of it. It would be the real locals to that area that do know about it and are using it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go to Lorna right now and ask her if you understand what's being requested, because there's actually a direction to staff, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship, and I will say that I will ask Public Works to add it to their work plan. However, as you know, we are short-staffed in Public Works right now.
Yeah.
Our new staff person starts. It'll take some time, for them to get caught up to speed, but certainly it can be added to their work list.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. And then I have Rob Begg, I believe, from the audience, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Question through the chair to Lorna. A couple of things. Number one, I would like to know when the second access that's within 10 feet of an existing access reverted back to the village. It was deferred at a council meeting, never to be brought forward again. So I would like to see those minutes of where it was actually.
I'm sorry, you'd have to put that in writing, Rob.
Okay, I'll do that Monday.
More information.
Also, the pathway that the Divers Beach that Councillor Wilder refers to is the most unsafe 6-inch path I've ever seen in my life. If it had any water on it, you would immediately take off. So it is totally unmaintained. I've lived here for 6 years and I've seen the same person use that path twice, 6 years. So possibly I just don't see them very often. However, I think on some of these paths, the access at the bottom of Tatlow is clearly marked, and it has a rail that's been installed. And I would also like to ask council why they feel that there are 2 accesses required within 10 feet of the same section of beach. But I will follow up, Lorna, with a letter to yourself. That's my recollection, as well as other neighbors down there. So I'll look forward to the answer to that.
Rob?
Yeah.
Just a question from you to confirm, when you were talking about the diver's path, correct? Is that the one that you were saying was quite steep and to get down there?
You would be very hard pressed to call it a path.
Okay, so, but I just wanted to clarify, you're saying in the 6 years here that you've only seen one person go down there basically or use it, is that correct?
Correct. I've seen one diver that's used it, he and his girlfriend twice, and talked to them both times.
Okay, so I mean, not in, I do agree it's a bit of a steep path, but I will say this over, and I won't even go back for all my time here, but in the last 2 weeks, my wife and I walking by have seen 2 different sets of divers going down. I will say I've never seen a diver slip. I don't know if that's to do with the gear they're carrying down. But I would agree with you, it's a fairly steep incline. So anyways, I'll take that down. I'll take that, my hand down now and go on, Councillor Snell.
Yes, I agree. The diver's path is very steep. I would not want to go down it unless I was got a stick to help me. But like yourself, in the last little while, I've seen several people going up and down it. And to my surprise, the other day, I witnessed a family that was taking an inflatable dinghy down. It was deflated, and they took it down in a couple of loads and inflated the boat on the beach at the bottom and went off and attended to some traps. So it's surprisingly enough, it is steep and it is horrible, but it is used quite frequently. In fact, I did mention to them that there was one at the other end of the street by the turnaround that in fact would be far better for them and safer for them to use. They were most appreciative, and I'm sure I'll see them down there. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have Councillor Clark, and then we'll note that we've kind of morphed into from new business to public question period, so we'll keep going till we're finished up.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Councillor
Yeah.
Clark.
No, I just wanted to point out that the path that you're talking about, yes, it's not suitable for everybody. I can go down there, no problem, right? But I know not everybody can. I think, you know, when we're talking about paths, it's we also have to be cautious. If we were to say, oh, that path is not good enough, then we will be shutting down a lot of access that residents use. I've said once before, and I'll say it again, you can't really child-proof the whole village, right? So there's going to be some access that are more suitable for you know, for certain people, and other access that are more suitable for people that have a little bit more challenge. There's 2 great assets, one by Rob Begg's house, really. There's 2 assets. One was privately built, but now it's a village property, right? So the public is welcome to use, and there is a very well used path there too. So it's 2 great access there. Lots of space to park, and I think the residents should use it. And yeah, I'll finish with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. And Don Babineau.
Can I talk about something else?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. Tax increase. The tax increase that recently went through.
Okay, so I'm going to say right now, is this off the agenda tonight?
It's not.
You're anticipating a passing of a motion that hasn't been passed yet then. So if I'll just ask you to hold on that, Don, because it's not on the agenda. So this council made a decision to keep with that. And if they decide to change it, then they will do it going ahead. Okay?
Okay, so I'll make one other point then.
Okay. And on the agenda, right, Don?
On the agenda.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I applaud Councillor Drake's last motion that will allow me to speak or others to speak on subjects other than what was discussed in the meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you very much then. Okay, so we're now at the point where,
Your worship, Dave Warren,
Oh.
had to raise his hand and he can't do it with his electronic.
Dave Warren, thank you for capturing my attention, working with Lorna. Okay, go ahead, Dave. Please.
Thank you. Dave Warren, 4925 Robson Road. I hope I'm not breaching protocol. The topic I wish to mention wasn't directly on the agenda, but you referred to it in the discussion pertaining to the water committee. You're having a water committee meeting tomorrow or the next day. Will this also be available on Zoom for the whole village as other committees used to meet in the village hall and allow the public to attend?
Okay, so I think it's definitely was raised in this meeting, so we'll certainly address it. So this is, I believe, and what's happened is in all the meetings with the committees. I don't understand them to be an official meeting of a committee. I understand them to be a meeting with council. So council put it in place. And at the time they put it in place, our chief administrative officer was off. So we had Paul Richardson there doing both jobs, and we recorded them. So all the meetings with the council representative and the mayor have all been recorded, and they're there. And if there's a decision at some point to make them accessible, we can certainly make them, you know, if that's a decision made by council. But it's not a meeting of the committee. It's a meeting of the committee, meeting with the mayor and a rep. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Dave. Thank you. Okay, we are now at the point where we have no further speakers, so it would be appropriate at this point for a motion to adjourn, and the time would be 10:16. So
moved.
Councillor Wilder moving, Councillor Drake seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the meeting tonight
Thank
and
you.
participating. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Yep, good night,
Good night,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Yep, take care.
Nice to see you, Julie Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, yes.
Oh, look at there's Tommy.
Look at Tommy.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.